for a split second, I got genuinely upset. Like, you guys know I like to drink. Like, I just can't control it. I'd love to control it. Ideally, I'd have a couple of drinks and be fine. And you're telling me that's a possibility?
But then this was in between the second and third?
Yeah, the second and third.
And it didn't change your viewpoint, though?
No, it didn't, because at that point...
What's cooking, everybody? I am joined in the bunker today by Mr. John Kostakopoulos, and man, oh man, was this a wild story. So John was featured on 60 Minutes a few years back, where he discussed how his alcoholism was completely healed by psychedelics. And no, it's not what you think. He wasn't in some basement somewhere with a shaman tripping balls. Instead, he was over at NYU taking part in one of the initial studies where they were measuring how psychedelics could properly treat things like addiction. And obviously it worked for John. So you're going to hear all about that today, and you're going to hear all about this whole space with psychedelics and some of the bad education we have in America about it and how it actually really can be used for a lot of people. Because John ended up co-founding Apollo Pact, which works to lobby Congress to get federal funding for psychedelic treatment for all different types of people. So it's not just for addiction and the things that John is familiar with. It's also for things like veterans and guys coming back with PTSD who currently have to go to places like Mexico and Costa Rica to get their own psychedelic treatment on their own dime because we don't do it here, or we don't do much of it here. So I learned a lot in this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think you guys will too. If you are on YouTube right now, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button on the video. And as always, would love to hear from you down in the comment section below. To everyone who is on Apple or Spotify, thank you for checking out the show over there. If you haven't already, please be sure to leave a 5-star review on either one of those platforms, as that is a huge, huge help for the show. And thank you to everyone who already has. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian Dorey, and this is TRENDIFIER. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where is the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions. Your story, man. I was really happy Mark hooked this up because one of the things that I really don't know nearly enough about, I'm so uneducated when I talk with people, is the whole psychedelics as a treatment. Yeah. And I would say, I would even extend that and say psychedelics in general. It's very interesting to me. And your story being that you were an alcoholic for, what was it, like a decade?
Close to it, yeah.
And you were cured.
Totally cured, which is nuts because...
Insane.
I mean, there's no treatment. You know, from my understanding, the best treatment outside of psychedelics for addiction and substance use is that you're able to live with your disease. So you're going to AA meetings or you're going to see a therapist. So the cravings are always there. Some days are easier than others. But it's always lingering, and people, like when I was going to AA, there were guys in there that would tell stories that they were sober for 20 or 30 years, and then they'd relapse, and I'm like, and I'm in there for like 20 days, and I'm like, well, you know, this is going to be tough.
Yeah, maybe the best way to do this would be to start from the top, though, with like when you got first exposed to alcohol, because you were really young, right? You were like 15-ish, something like that?
Yeah, like a little younger, like 13, we're sneaking beers.
Wow.
Yeah, like 13, 14.
Now, who was doing? Did you have like an older brother or something? Or
no, friends like older brothers. So my older sister was like honor roll valedictorian. So my
you
parents
went a different way for a short time.
My parents had, you know, a little taste of both worlds there.
Right.
The straight A student and then the not so.
Well, I mean, that's when you're like 12 or 13. That's such a. I mean, Jesus Christ! Like I can't even picture myself when I was that age. What's going through my head? Like if someone had put alcohol in front of me, God knows what would have happened.
It's tough. Yeah. Like I saw a 12-year-old the other day or a 13-year-old the other day, and I'm like, this is crazy what I was doing at that kid's age.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not like I grew up in a broken home where like my parents were great, loving, like they were always, it was all like we would just sneak off and do it. It wasn't like my parents weren't there and, you know, I raised myself or something. Like they were very present in my life, but you know, kids are smart. Kids are going to find ways to game the system and, you know, figure out how they're going to get their hands on things that they want to do or do what they want to do. So,
what was the first thing you ever drank?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably beer.
You liked it right away?
No, I didn't. It took a while to really get used to the taste, but I liked how it made me feel. So, like, you know, my friends and I would force a couple of beers. I remember one time we even put sugar in it. We tried because we were like, this is awful. I don't know. You know,
that definitely didn't make it better though.
It actually did not.
Yeah,
I thought it would, and you'd think, okay, it would be a little sweet, but I was like, no, I'd rather, you know, drink the other stuff, like the regular.
Yeah, I don't even like. What are some of those like the summer shandy stuff? Like the things now that have like all the sugar in them, like they taste weird to me, even though they're literally making it from scratch like that.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I think when people are thinking of beer, they think like a lime and a Corona, you know, and that's sour. Yeah. It's a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
You know?
That is strange. Whenever like a new product comes out, I'm just happy I'm out of the game. How many drinks can we make here? You got the spiked seltzers and
there's a lot. They'll get creative with it, man.
I mean, why not? People are buying it.
If they can sell it,
sure.
That's it.
There's 100%. A market. Oh yeah.
So you get into it when you're like 13, and then you said you went to boarding school. So away at boarding school, I would imagine you're pilfering a lot of beers in the rooms there, right?
Yeah. Well, I would. So that's the thing with boarding school. I don't know if we had a one-strike policy or not, but they were pretty strict on any substances. So I would just go home or go back to New York every weekend, you know, with a bunch of our other friends, and go nuts in New York for probably less than 24 hours because we had Saturday classes and then we'd usually have like, you know, sports. We'd have a game that night. So I'd get into Manhattan probably at like 10 or 11. I mean, it wasn't. And then you got to catch a train at 3 p.m. at a Grand Central the next day. So you don't have that much time. But
you were making it count.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's your one, you know, that's 15 hours or whatever it is out of your whole week to go back there and no chaperones or anything really. And so.
Yeah, you do your thing. But like, I'm just trying to think of like a high schooler. I mean, I guess it makes sense because you're getting that done on the weekend. But at some point, like maybe after high school, the thing I'm always curious about is when people will tell me after the fact that like, oh yeah, I was an alcoholic for X number of years or whatever it was. And yet they had a great job and they were functional and people around them didn't know about it, but they're drinking all the time. So like, what? Maybe the better question is, you went to college. Like, did that start to become like you're showing up to class drunk too, or how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I was really in college. I would drink to do like any task that I needed to do that I didn't really need to be present for. I mean, mentally present, physically present, but so there were times for college that I'd be, you know, drinking during class for sure. Just to get through these, you know, 2 or 3 hour lectures. But I mean that and yeah, back to your point about functioning alcoholics, there are a lot of alcoholics are functioning alcoholics. and it's everyone's different. For me, I couldn't. There are guys and a lot of my friends that can drink a ton. So first of all, there are a lot of my friends that drink a lot, and I don't think they're alcoholics. They just drink. I mean, they're not drinking a lot all the time, but I'm not concerned about them. They're not constantly drinking. They'll have, I was at a wedding with one of these guys, and he wasn't even blackout drunk or anything, but it didn't cross my mind. Like, maybe he should be pumping the brakes, but he's 30 and it wasn't too bad. I just wasn't worried about it. There are other people that I see them drinking. They could even be drinking less. And I'm like, okay, man, this guy is not going to be going to work for the next few days or something can. So everyone's got a different relationship with alcohol. For me, I would drink so much that it would take a couple of days to recover. So I'd have like the physical hangover, and then it would also come with what I call a moral hangover.
A moral hangover.
A moral hangover.
Never heard that.
It's like, it's the anxiety and, I've heard mental hangover. It's just like, and it happens mainly when you black out, at least for me. But even when I didn't black out, because I knew I shouldn't be drinking and I was constantly trying to stop drinking. But I had so much guilt that I'd wake up, and I think that's why it was easier for me to give up alcohol for the next few weeks, because I'd feel so terrible, and I'd carry that with me the next few days or weeks, and I wouldn't even want to drink. And then after some point, I'd be bored enough, or something would happen. I'd just say, "Screw it!" I would talk it down. Like, I wasn't that bad. I could have a couple and get by, or if things are good, if I'm doing well at work or doing well personally, whatever it is, I'm like, I could, I've been good enough and things are going well. I could sneak one in here. But it never is just one.
So it was more streaky for you, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I'd go on like some of these benders, or what they call binge drinking, just because I wouldn't be able to. I really had to pick my battles, because I would not be able to hold a job if I'm drinking every night. It just would not be possible.
So that's so interesting, though, because the more normal one you hear about is, like, of course, people binge drink.
Yeah.
But then there's also, they need some every day. You know what I mean? And that's not all alcoholics. So, you're someone where that was not the case.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're showing up sloppy drunk to work. Hence why a lot of people are like, when you tell them you're an alcoholic, they're like, what?
Yeah.
I
mean, there a couple of times it did happen where I was so drunk, or not drunk. I got drunk like the night before, or even the 2 days prior, where I'd still have a hangover and I'd need a little alcohol in the morning just to stop the hangover and the what they call DTs, delirium tremens.
Delirium tremens. What's
yeah,
that?
So you get like what they call the shakes, so people can get the shakes, some hallucinations, and that's actually a good segue, because that's how this research got started with psychedelics treating alcoholics. In the 1950s, doctors thought, because there were some people out there, some alcoholics that they experienced DTs, and
which is that term you just said?
Delirium tremens. Yeah. They stopped drinking, right, altogether. And kind of like a wake-up call. It was so brutal and painful that they just didn't want to deal with that anymore, and that was enough to stop.
So when people got it like really bad, you're saying, where full-blown hallucination, they feel like they're on a trip, not necessarily someone who's just like hungover and they have a little bit of the
they have
feels.
The shakes, and it's bad. Some people seize. Some people have seizures. I mean, alcohol is I think there are only two drugs out there that if you stop cold turkey, you can die. And that's alcohol and benzos. So like Xanax or other, I mean, look that up. We could look it up later.
That's what,
but heroin,
what's his face? Jordan Peterson, I think, had that with benzos. Yeah.
So you can't stop these things cold turkey because there's a chance that you could have a seizure and die. Heroin's not there. I think you could. It's going to be a miserable withdrawal. Right. You're going to be in a lot of pain. But I don't think you could have a seizure when you just stop cold turkey.
Interesting. Yeah, I think people just they get like the hallucinations and everything.
It's miserable from what I hear, but so the doctors thought, okay, this might be able to replicate the DTs if we give these alcoholics LSD. And so they gave these study participants LSD, and then they realized that a lot of them stopped drinking, but it wasn't because they got scared straight or something. It was they were like just more enlightened, and they had a different perspective on their drinking or on life, and they came to the conclusion that alcohol wasn't working for them. So just give it and similar to my experience where I was just like, it was kind of that simple, like that, you've been trying to stop for almost 10 years now. Just give it up already.
For 1 sec, let's back up.
Yeah.
You get out of college. Where did you go work?
So I was I was a journalist over at The Street. It's
like Jim Cramer's place?
Yeah, it's a financial news company, right? And so I started out there in, 2014,
okay,
around there. And it was great. I loved it. Always wanted to, I was a news junkie, always wanted to do something in news, whether it was right or whatever it was. So I got to do that. And I really cared about work. I wanted to be good at my job. I was like, all right, I'm in the industry I want to be in. You better not screw this up. So I was going to AA. I was doing,
Oh, you were?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When did that start for you? Like,
I mean, my first AA meeting was at 16. That's when
Did you tell anyone about this?
Yeah, my doctor was like, you should probably, because I told him I was drinking it wasn't really out of control and at that age, but he was still.
Your doctor said go to an AA meeting.
He said you should check one out just to see if, if you could relate to any of the speakers.
Now, what's that? I've never even heard of that before. A 16-year-old walking into an Alcoholics Anonymous. What's that like?
It was a little strange. I think I didn't make a regular thing out of it until, I don't know, a couple of years later, but I would go periodically after that just to like, okay, maybe I gotta, and I felt, you know what it was too? I felt that if I were going and at least making an effort, even if I wasn't, genuine about it, subconsciously I'd feel better about myself.
It's like you're paying the piper.
Yeah, it's like, all right, at least I'm going through the motions here. I have no intention to stop drinking now. And I'd always, because I was so young with all this, so I'd always say, I'll stop when I'm like 30 or I'll stop when I'm 40. I think 30 was the number. And then the doctors, they were like, if you keep this up, you'll, be dead by 30. So
really,
I'm like,
well, what were they seeing? Like, because you obviously admitted, good for you, you admitted to them like when you were young, like, oh yeah, yes, I am drinking. But then like, were they seeing things in tests that they're like, holy shit?
No, thank God. I mean, but and it was because I was so young. It wasn't decades and decades of, so my blood tests, liver counts, all of that were okay. But no, they were just like, this is not your drink out. So when I checked into this NYU trial, we had to fill out
the psychedelics thing.
The psychedelics, yeah, the psilocybin trial. And I was like weaning down my drinking. This is when I was, working nonstop. And so my drinking was cut down, but it was still a lot.
What's a lot?
So they said the 95th percentile. So I was averaging, I think the number was 22.7 drinks. And that was me cutting down.
A week or
no,
a day?
Like a day, yeah. Like an easy in and out.
And you said you'd be doing binges though too, so that means you're having nights where it's like 45.
So
because some days you're not drinking, right?
Oh well. I think this was for a sitting, like a. So like
when
night,
you do it, okay.
Whenever I am drinking,
I'm sitting here going like 45.
Yeah,
holy shit.
I know.
You're not dead.
Like 40 wasn't. I mean, if I'm drinking, the whole like afternoon to night, or even if I start earlier than that,
yeah.
Like I could do a handle, like a whole, like something that you'd bring to a party.
How tall are you?
Like 5'6".
I was gonna say you're not that tall.
No.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah.
You're doing numbers that the offensive lineman friends of mine were doing.
Now I'm putting up. I'm getting my weight up there. So.
Yeah.
But,
all right. So bottom line, I misunderstood that when you said it. Sorry, but like when you would sit, you guys were, you and the medical professionals were able to calculate that's about what you were doing every time.
Yeah, they would ask us. So this was so long ago that. Yeah, they would. So I'd come in there and they would say, okay, I think they wanted me to keep track during it, or sometimes when I'd come in after, or like later that week into the hospital, they'd say, okay, what did you drink, or did you drink last week? If so, what days? Okay, how many days, or how many drinks Friday night, Saturday night, Tuesday night? So then, and I just remember like being on the couch or like sitting there and telling one of the nurses who's filling out my, stuff. I was like, it was pretty low key. I only had this. And then I forgot. I was like, maybe, 4 beers or something. And then I had forgot. I was like, oh, but then I did this. And then I had, and then it ended up being 18 or something when I thought, I was like, I was actually pretty good that day. It wasn't, and then I was like, oh man, now
she's sitting there calling the red alarm.
Yeah, she was like, and that's it. I was like, I did actually get a call from a friend who was at a bar, and then added on 15 drinks there, but
casual.
So, yeah.
Holy shit.
So
the bottom line is you come out, you have a regular job, you're able to function in the sense that you would go on binges when you did it, and all the while, even during college where you were saying you were drinking during class sometimes, you're periodically going to these AA meetings too.
Yeah. And it wasn't like forced on me by anyone, no one was, even the doctor at 16, they were like, you should check it out, or I'd encourage you to check it out.
Did your parents know anything about this?
Yeah, and they were like, and that was tough on them because, I mean, obviously just not me being their child going through this, and they couldn't do anything about it. They didn't know how to do anything. But alcoholism isn't in our family at all, so it's not like this kind of came out of left field for everyone. So they didn't know how to handle this.
When did they get a feel that you had an issue? During college?
Probably during college.
Did you tell them, or did they like have to wake you up one day off the floor?
No, I mean, they've certainly they caught me on some bad days and saw me, pretty out of it. But, I was always pretty honest with my parents about the drinking, and, and they had known my intention of, I didn't see myself drinking as an adult. And so this was like me drinking as like, you know, a college kid, a high school kid, or like a young guy, right?
So that's how you would write it off to them, so to speak.
Well, I mean, that's what I truly believed. I was like, I knew I wasn't going to be able to drink or have a normal relationship with alcohol when, you know, I'm an adult, or I got a job, like I'm doing, you know, grown up stuff. I got like, you know, bills to pay,
right.
All that. I got other people relying on me. There's no way I'd be able to do, if I want to be a functioning, you know, contributing citizen to society, I can't do this. So I knew at a young age that I was like, all right, I got to figure out how I know I'm going to stop drinking, or it's just going to kill me. So I got to figure out how I'm going to stop drinking going forward.
So you've been beating around this a little bit with like how it went down, but the full process, because the way I understood this when we talked on the phone is that it had been a decade and you found this study.
Yeah.
How did you find it? Like and how long did it take after finding it to getting in contact with them? Where was it? And then like how much was done before it? You've talked about like the number of drinks and measuring, but like how long was that part of the process as well?
So great question. This was total luck how I found it. My mom changed doctors and she started to see this new doctor and confided in this new doctor that, you know, there was something, maybe I had just gotten back from rehab or something, but I was like, we had tried everything.
Oh, you went to rehab too?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, I checked myself into rehab when I was like 6 months after I turned 21.
Oh, shit.
Like I was legally allowed to drink for months and I was already looking for, I'm like, I can't, you know.
So you told your parents about that?
Yeah.
All right, so they knew this part as well.
Yeah.
Was that like in the summer or during the school year?
No, during the summer.
Okay. Advantageous.
Yeah, it was that definitely, like I had a couple of friends go to rehab during COVID and no one knew. It was great. Now you're checking out, you know, everyone's working remotely, so they were still Zooming from the rehab and no one really knew. Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
So yeah. But that's not the usual, right? That's not the norm. Like you have to usually throw out your phone, not throw it out, but you know, you can't bring your phone or you can't use it for the majority of it. No bringing laptop, no outside communications. You have to come in here and just focus on, you know,
that's called inpatient, right? Where you decide.
No, inpatient is when you're physically in, like staying there overnight and stuff.
But there's also one where like when you don't get to decide, right?
Court ordered, is that?
Yeah. Is that a different facility?
No, there were some people I think that were court ordered here. And it was kind of, you know, I don't know if, because a lot of those people they were there against their own will.
Right.
And they didn't, like if you want to get better, like you're not going to get better for anyone else, for a judge, for your wife, for your, you know, husband, whoever, your kids. Like you got to get better because you want to get better yourself.
Right.
And they could be like another reason, like I want to get better so I could be there for, you know, the people I love. But ultimately you got to get better because like no one's going to tell you to sober up, and that's not going to work for the majority of people. So it was kind of, you know, mixing the court ordered and like, or like just not even court ordered, like people there against their will, like other kids my age or something, like their parents are sending them there.
But aren't there some, maybe this is also the other thing I was thinking of as well. Aren't there some where like you can check in and they can't tell you not to leave 48 hours later versus some where you check in and it's like, no, like you literally can't leave for 90 days?
So I think like psych wards, you can't. If you're a risk to either yourself or someone else, I think that's where they could keep you.
If you checked yourself in, they can do that.
Yeah, even if you checked yourself, if you're like, I'm suicidal, or like, I'm really angry, I think I'm going to hurt myself or other people, you go in there, I think they could, I think that's when they can hold you again, even if you want to leave.
Right.
But no, I think I could have left whenever I wanted. But I genuinely wanted to be there and get better. I mean, there were days I wanted to leave, but overall, I wanted to get better and stop drinking. But that didn't. And when I went in there, the guy was like the director of this rehab told all of us, kind of like tough love. It's like, look around you. Only 3% of you are going to succeed at this and be 3%. Sober. 3%. Not
they have a whole business on this. 3%.
I mean,
if you and me did 3% of anything, we'd be fired.
It's crazy.
Wow.
And you're dealing with people's lives here too. It's not like you're not playing patty cakes. Like, this is life and death for a lot of these people. And that's the best outcome they have. I mean,
hey guys, if you're enjoying this episode, please be sure to share it on social media and with your friends. Spreading the word about the show is the best possible thing we can do to grow the audience and allow the podcast to get better and better. So thank you to each and every one of you who have done that already. 3.
It's crazy.
Now, were you with a bunch of different types of addicts, like drugs as well? Or did they, in yours, did they keep it kind of separate?
This one, I think at this one, there were some opiate addicts, and because I remember some folks were taking methadone. Some people, it's like, or it was methadone, or it was something. It was either methadone or maybe Suboxone, but I think it was methadone. And yeah, it was a big, mix of people.
That's another thing though, because the way these different things are treating, obviously there's similar psychological impacts of any form of addiction, obviously.
Yeah.
We can back that scientifically, but still, there's a difference in behavior patterns with someone who's addicted to heroin versus someone who's got an addiction to alcohol. You know what I mean? So, like, the idea to me that they're all running through a lot of the same programs, like in the same space, that almost seems like a little... And I don't know, it's a totally uneducated take, but from the outside, armchair quarterback take, it's like, that seems a little bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, like it should be more specialized and catered to each. And, I'd agree with that. And there's, because, I mean, NA, I think it is like NA, Narcotics Anonymous. It's like a spin-off of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. They're both like step programs, and right, and weirdly enough though, some AA people don't want the NA people there, but I think for any NA group, alcoholics are always welcome, because and also alcohol is a drug.
Funny how we do that,
right? So I don't know, it's strange. I've heard, I have heard that it works for the same treatment for alcoholics, like AA or something, could work for heroin addicts or something, drug users. So
this stuff, as you said, I mean, the rehab guy put it bluntly in there with the rehab system, which then follows a lot of this aftercare where it's like AA and things like that. It's such a low percentage.
Yeah.
And when I've looked at it, and what I really want to do is like read a full book on this. I haven't done that yet. I just read like a lot of different research reports and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when you look at the genesis of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not saying that like the motives weren't great. Terrific motives. And, they work in religion as well and stuff like that. But it's not, it was like a religious program. It wasn't scientifically backed. So a lot of these people, like, like here's a good question. How do you feel about the whole concept of people having to constantly repeat and remind themselves and everyone around them that they're an addict or that they're this, they're that, and that they can't be like everyone else?
It's interesting. It does work for a lot of people, like that
Sure.
vibe of it. I mean, overall, it's still the vast majority of people going to AA aren't, unfortunately, going to get sober. It takes multiple tries. But that being said, if I can't get someone into a clinical trial for like psilocybin or something that's looking to treat alcohol use disorder, I'll even go to a meeting with these guys because right now it's the best free resource and one of the best resource that it's got better results than some of these other treatments that you have to pay for. So overall, I think it's one of the better things that we have, but that's still, I don't know what it is, maybe like
It's low percentage.
15%, and that's high.
It just, I've talked with some people. There's a couple different friends in particular who come to mind who, to their credit, are completely clean from serious things. One of them, heroin, actually. And it took a long time.
Yeah.
It took years. But he did the whole system, which I guess is in that case, Narcotics Anonymous or whatever afterwards. And he finally reached a point where he was like, his sponsor would just always be reminding him and making him say all these things. And he's like, wait, this is getting culty. I have moved on with my life. I don't doubt that, if I ever made a decision to touch that again, I'm fucked. I know this. You don't need to tell me this again. What he felt like was that his agency was being taken away because any time he wanted to do shit that had nothing to do with that, not, just shit for work, the guy'd be like, well, you need to think about doing that deal because what if you get high off the money? And he's like, what are you talking about? So he finally, and this was 4 years ago now, he was like, no.
This isn't for,
stopped it, doesn't go to the guy. And what I guess a piece of information I should add to this is that I don't know how people coming off of heroin work. I would imagine everyone's all different. But for him, he said quitting it was it felt impossible. He failed a million times. He said once he made it, and by made it, he's like, you need to be a year.
Got over it,
right?
And
he's like, now the thought of taking heroin,
it's frightening.
He feels like the devil comes inside. He's not even a religious guy. He's I literally, he's like, I can't be near it because I feel like someone's going to come prick me with it. I don't want it.
Oh, yeah. So I believe it.
In fairness to other people out there who may hear an explanation like that and be like, well, that's not how it works. There may be other people where it's not like that, where they they feel what if I just took a little? So, to keep it at least balanced.
Yeah. And I was like that with drinking. So if things were going well or I hadn't drank anything for a few months or whatever it was, I would forget, or I wouldn't, it's not that I'd forget, but I'd think it was okay to drink a little now because I was kind of under the radar. I wasn't, causing any issues. I could drink a little. So I do get the constant, reminding, and you got remember and they say people, places, and things. That's what they, in the AA or a lot of these other groups, and that, it is true for a lot of.
Can you explain to people what that means?
Absolutely.
Who aren't familiar.
So people are, people, places, and things. People they're referring to about, the usual suspects, whether it's your friends that you hang out, that you use drugs together, or drink together, right? That bad crowd, or at least bad crowd for you. So you got to stay away from those. You got to stay the places, right? Don't go to bars. Don't go to, sketchy places where you buy drugs, or like sketchy neighborhoods where, that happens, or, parties that have a ton of booze and alcohol and drugs there, right? If you're not trying to drink or use drugs, stay away from those physical locations. And then things like, don't do things that, like, if you always, drink when you're playing golf, they're going to tell you, maybe take it easy off the golf for a little bit until you can, or, right, things that trigger you to drink and kind of get you going again, and get you craving that taste of whatever it is.
So essentially the habits of your surroundings.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Agreed.
But then it's like, what do you want me to do? Move, to the monastery and I mean, like in New York, I'm walking by 3 liquor stores and, 4 bars every block.
That you used to go to.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. It's you can't escape it unless you physically move out. So that was just like a tough task to. I mean, how are you really gonna? And especially for a young kid too, right? When all our friends, even if they're not, if they don't have a problem, a lot of my friends are going out and drinking and hanging out, and they're doing it in a safe way. They're not drinking too much, but so I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like,
it's
who am I going to hang out with?
It is. I agree.
Well, they're saying don't even go to that. They're saying you can't, even if you're going to drink seltzers, you shouldn't be there. So
which is awkward too. Because then you're turning off your relationships.
That's
and it's
I
can't, but I can. It's tough, man.
No, it is. Yeah. But and then so when I did this trial and after I left,
now we're there.
Right. I didn't really change. I mean, I organically stopped hanging out with guys that I was only calling, because I knew they drank as much as I did, and they wouldn't judge me or like try to, So there were a couple of guys that once I was drinking again, I'd start hanging out with. So some of those like gradually fell off because I'd only hang out with people that I was drinking with. There were a few of those, but a lot of my friends, they're still drinking. They don't have problems, and I drink a lot with them. I'd drink more, but but I still hang out with them, and I see them drink, and that I go to bars, I go to restaurants that are today,
like you do this now.
Yeah,
no problem.
Like I'm going to.
If you are not sleeping on an 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, you are missing out on days, weeks, months, years of your life, because every night that you sleep on an 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, you are getting the deepest sleep possible. And that is because the 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, which comes in queen or king sizes, is wired directly into the same company 8 Sleep's proprietary app, which measures your sleep stages, your body temperature, your heart rate, and all these different scientific things throughout the night to make sure that you get the deepest sleep possible. And when you wake up in the morning, you will have slept 6 hours, but feel like you slept 8. So if you use the link in my description, along with the code TRENDIFIER at checkout, that's TRENDIFIER, you can get $150 off your own 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover today. And you can know exactly what I'm talking about the instant you start sleeping on it. So check it out.
I prefer to meet people at bars because you're in and out. You stay for a drink or two, and then you're gone, right?
Wow.
You don't have to like sit down. I'd rather have drinks with people than like a full-on meal sometime. Like, okay, I gotta because I want, I just want to get home, unwind. I'm working all day. I'll see someone for like 1 or 2 drinks and then be out of there. It's not as much of a commitment. So I actually prefer going to bars.
Wow. So that. I think where I got you sidetracked, just because I didn't have the context before, was with the whole rehab thing. So you had been explaining that, but now back to the actual trial.
Yeah.
So you said your mom changed doctors.
Yeah, good
and then
memory.
You found out about it. But then what happened?
So they weren't doing this yet. They were getting ready to launch. This is NYU. They were getting ready to launch this trial. So I saw.
What year is this?
Probably 2014.
Okay.
So I saw the doctors' names in there. I tracked them down and ended up seeing one of them like through his private practice because they didn't have anything open yet. They were getting ready to do the clinical trial, but they weren't enrolling yet. So I was basically like waiting at the gates, waiting for them to open it up.
First customer, baby.
Yeah,
We're here.
I was just like, okay, what are we doing here?
You didn't have a lack of effort, I gotta tell you. Like you really, for years and years, you were all about it.
No, yeah. And I went to go see him, and I mean, ironically, not ironically, but it was like he was the best doctor that I saw because a lot of the doctors I saw, not all of them, but a lot of them would, judge me or make me feel bad about myself. I'm like, I already feel like, Yeah,
that's kind of fucked.
Yeah. They're like, you really shouldn't do the tough love. I don't know what it was, but
you shouldn't drink. Put it down.
Yeah. It's like, or like, what are you doing? Like, again, it's like, what do you think I'm seeing you for? Like, what do you think I'm here for? Like, of course, this is an issue. This is a problem. That's why I'm coming to see you.
And what was this doctor's name? This one you liked?
This is Steve Ross. So
NYU guy still
NYU.
To this day?
Yeah, he's still there. So he did the cancer anxiety.
Cancer anxiety.
So patients
that.
for psilocybin assisted therapy. So cancer patients that had anxiety, like end of life fear and anxiety, rightfully so.
Yeah, that's kind of
they'd enroll in this, and a lot of them, I think 80% didn't have any anxiety anxiety related to the cancer. So they still had anxiety from like everyday life, like, okay, are my kids gonna be getting into a good school or something, or is my job gonna be secure, or is it,
And they're dying though of
and
cancer.
they're dying, but that they didn't.
Is my job gonna be secure?
Yeah, right. Like, so, like, we're all human. We still have problems, but they weren't worried about, am I gonna die or not? So it was, and I've heard this from and I had myself had a death experience in one of my psilocybin sessions. So it's a common theme with the study participants.
I'm gonna let you get through it because if I touch that, we're gonna go on a big side track. We'll come back to that. But Steve, this guy had done those types of trials.
So
you're saying
he had done that at NYU. I think they published it in 2014. So they had published it that year that I might have met him in 2013 or 2014, but around there. So he published that around that time. And then so I was seeing him for a little bit, and then finally they started enrolling.
So you had just heard about it was going to be a possibility. And so you then started to see Stephen Ross, and you're like, when are you doing it?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
But thank God, he was a really good doctor. So it made it easier. I'm like, okay, this guy is like, he knows what he's talking about. He's giving good advice. He's like, he's a...
And he didn't judge you.
Didn't judge me. Like, nice guy, approachable. You could confide in him. I mean, great guy all around.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I got lucky there. And then, so they started enrolling, and then he put me in touch with one of the, people figuring out all the enrollment and logistics. So,
did he tell you, like, anything about what you could expect with this, or, like, how many people were going to be open to doing it? Did you know any of that?
No, but he was kind of like, I don't know if you'll be able to get in or not, don't get your hopes up. And I was also, so they were, I think the age limit was 25 to like 65. And and I was 25, so I had just made it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was very lucky.
That probably also helped you too, because they want people from the ends of the spectrum. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a total guess. I might be an idiot.
But there aren't, I mean, I'm for the most part, the majority of people getting sober too, or trying to get sober, aren't that young, right? A lot of.
Yeah.
So maybe that was because, yeah, that could have given them another data point there for that demographic for sure.
So you got accepted into it.
Got accepted in.
And what was the runway from there? Is it like show up tomorrow, or is it like 6 months from now? Like what was the story?
So it was kind of, I mean, we met regularly, I think like weekly. So it was like the doctors and I, or like the team at NYU Langone.
That he was a part of, Steve Ross.
So I didn't see Steve Ross. I saw another doctor. This guy was his like co-lead investigator, I think is what they call it. So Steve Ross and Bogenschutz, they're both medical doctors doing this research. And because I saw Dr. Ross in his private practice, I couldn't see him throughout this trial. So I saw Michael Bogenschutz. So Dr. Bogenschutz, this guy was also, I mean, these two guys I credit them with saving my life, obviously. Plus the rest of the team at NYU too. It wasn't just the doctors. It was like the whole team. They were top notch. But
like the nurses and all that.
The nurses, they're therapists, they're social workers, PhDs doing the, psychotherapy, because you have two doctors for one, or two therapists for one patient or study participant. So I had Bogenschutz and another person who was, I think she was a social worker, like her
not
credentials.
A doctor.
Not a doctor, but like a therapist. So, and she went through the training of this therapy. And so you'd have like 2-on-1 psychotherapy pretty much weekly.
For how long before the actual event?
Just a few times. I mean, it was still, hours and hours altogether.
You're in there for a while.
Yeah. It wasn't like you're just checking in and see you later.
Giving your height and weight and leaving.
Yeah, you did that like the first time. They take the vitals, all of that. But yeah, they, maybe like a month into it, I did the first psilocybin session.
Okay, so did you know? I assume as soon as you enrolled and they said, okay, we're going to see you a few times, you knew when D-Day was. Like they told you, like, okay, we're going to do it like a month from now.
I don't know about, I knew it that early on, but after like a couple of like psychotherapy sessions, and they call this preparation. So you have the preparation sessions, and then you have the psilocybin session itself, and then you have integration. The integration sessions.
It's like the after, basically.
And you're integrating your experiences into, figuring out what it all means, how you're going to bring it with you going forward, incorporate it, integrate it into everyday life.
Were you doing, I'm sure, obviously, you're asking the doctors all kinds of questions because you're with them, but like, were you doing a lot of your own research? Because this was something I assume you previously didn't know much about.
I was doing a decent amount of research, but if I did, the research I did wasn't really going to change anything because this was my last resort. I had already tried everything, so I was already. My main concern was if this was going to be safe. So I was asking the doctors. I'm like, okay, what happens if I don't know who I am, or if I lose? I was asking them, am I going to go crazy? Am I going to be stuck in a bad trip permanently, or just all this wacky stuff? And they were like, no, you'll be fine. This is actually
take a mushroom, kid.
Yeah, right. And I was like, am I gonna become addicted to this stuff? And they were like, no, it's actually not addictive. So that's something.
That's got to be a wild concept for someone thinking about trying to get rid of a never-ending addiction with another substance and being told, no, you're going to like it, but you're never going to do it.
Yeah. Like
It's
I
nuts.
didn't, after I did this trial, I had and I don't have any, desire to look for mushrooms or anything on the street or do any psychedelics.
Have you ever done one since?
No. And before,
Never.
and I never did it before either because I was too scared. And that's the whole point of really what we're doing now too, because a lot of the reason I was scared was, now I'm not telling like kids to go do this recreationally,
Right.
but a lot of my fears were irrational, where I thought they were, science backed.
Because it was beat into you the wrong way,
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Yeah. And I thought, I was like, this is going to be unsafe. I'm going to go crazy. But it's not addictive. It's, fairly safe to do in a controlled setting. And if you're properly screened, like if, I think they screen mainly for family history of schizophrenia. So, but for the most part, other than that, you should be good to go.
So you do these sessions with them ahead of it, and
Yeah.
then you go in to do it. How long is it? Take me through it. What happened?
So I probably got in at like 8 a.m. maybe. So they're like, just block out the whole day. You're not going back to, you're not
You're not going back to work at 1.
You're not doing this at a lunch break.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I would see them at a lunch break, like for the psychotherapy stuff. Like I'd pop in. That's why this was the easiest thing I did. Treatment wise.
Yeah,
It wasn't
I'll bet.
like I still have to show up. Like you can't half-ass it. But compared to everything else, this was, a cakewalk.
Did you show up sober?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so, back to the D-Day part, though, they had asked me, they said, okay, don't drink, I think it was 11 days prior to your first session. So.
Hold on a minute. They asked, now obviously you didn't, but they asked an alcoholic.
No, not to drink.
Yeah, not to drink.
Yeah, leading
For
up.
11 days.
Yeah, that.
On their own devices, not in a rehab, chilling at home. You're a lifelong, long time alcoholic.
Long time, yeah.
Just don't drink for 11 days, would you? That seems a little...
I could see how people would think that's difficult, but strangely enough, at least for me, because when I would drink, I'd have like a good, at least few weeks to a month or two where I did not want to drink again because it was still so fresh in my mind. I'm like, I do not want to go down that road ever again. So that it wasn't too difficult, really.
For you,
for me,
it may not have been
for
that
me.
hard.
I could see it being difficult for other folks that don't get as
The people who are drinking every day.
Yeah, no, sure.
You were a different, as you've described, you were a different type of it. And there are different types of it.
So I was lucky in that way too.
You were a great patient. You walked in there, they're like, look at him, sober as hell.
Great.
Yeah.
Right? But I had counted backwards in my calendar 11 days from October something, because I stopped drinking October 9th was my last drink.
Was it like an event?
No, I wanted to do it by myself. I'm like, no, like this is a night for me. This could be my last night of drinking, and I wanted to spend this time, doing this solo and going out like this.
How'd you go out?
I can't even remember, but I had a bunch of, was it scotch or maybe bourbon, and also some beers. I think I got some.
All right, so you worked your way around the family class of alcohol.
Yeah, I was dabbling in a little bit of everything that night. A nice little variety.
This is so unique. You don't hear stories like this, like how you went to do it, and then you have to like count down. Okay, well, I medically can't take it ahead of this.
Oh, this is that because I'm like this might work.
Yeah.
Like a part of me was afraid that it was gonna work, right? Because I'm like, because I love to drink, even though it was a love-hate relationship.
Yes.
But like, I love to drink. That's why I did it. I mean, to start, and then it just got out of. I was like, okay, this is taking over. Now I got to stop. But I was afraid that I was gonna miss parts of that.
What was it? What were you afraid you were gonna miss? Like the actual alcohol or the experiences that come with it? Or both?
Probably both, but I loved how it just like numbed everything. You didn't have to worry about you're just like, but it wasn't really numbing or it was numbing, but it wasn't really, it was just delaying the anxiety or the stress. It was just kicking it down the road because I'd be stressed or, anxious or something. And then I'd drink, and then I wouldn't have a care in the world. But then the next day, I'm feeling that, and I'm like, oh man, this is awful.
What kinds of things would get you stressed and anxious?
I mean, it's so irrelevant. But just like worrying about stuff, either whether it was with school or work, or like any tasks or something, or. And it was like looking back on all of that, like it was so relevant. I couldn't even tell you what I was anxious or stressed out about, or, and I think a lot of it was the alcohol. I was mainly stressed out about my future self, not knowing what that guy's going to do. Because I could be fine right now, but I am scared that, me in next week or next year in 10 years.
Wow.
Just going to slip. Because I've heard so many stories like that. And I've done it, I've had, weeks where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm never going to drink again. This is leading up to that. And I had a great support system. I had like great routines and stuff. And then, you just get one bad day or something, and, you're back to square one.
Yeah.
So that's... And
you said you had just being clear, you had a really good relationship with your parents.
Yeah,
like you had
a
good childhood
exactly.
Overall.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were rebelling against shit that happened to you or anything like that.
No, I loved how alcohol made me feel. Yeah. And I think it was Steve Ross that said he thinks that's why, because... a lot of alcoholism is genetic too, but because we couldn't find any in my family, he thinks it was because I started drinking at a young age, and I never learned how to drink responsibly. I mean, I never, every time I drank, and I, kind of to this day too, I'm like, why are you just sipping on that drink? If I see someone... I'm like, I don't really get do it because I don't, that part of me too, like whether it's with work or like, other things I'm working on, but I'm like all or nothing when it comes to just like with my drink. Like there's no moderation for a lot of this stuff. I'm like, if I need to get something done or I'm working on something, I'm going to be doing that until it's finished.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if some of that, and it's not relevant for you because of how young you got into it, but I wonder about like age with that. Because now, I'm not 21 anymore.
Yeah.
And, when people would be like, oh, let's go get a drink or two, I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do with a drink or two, right? Like when we did it, I didn't like partying during the week. I did it very occasionally in college. I was really like, all right, let's do it on the weekend kind of deal.
That's good.
But like as I got a little older, I was suddenly like, yeah, I like one. This is fine. You know what I mean? So it worked for me. But when I was younger, like I'd be like, let's fucking rage, man. Like,
Right?
it's
Like,
just not, you're not thinking like that.
Well, I think most people think like that, like how you think, because you don't have a problem, and most
Yeah.
people don't have a problem or an issue with alcohol. But like to me, I'm just like, what do you like? Why even do just one or two?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
either all or not. Like I'm drinking until the wheels fall off. But
And that's farther. That's like,
and that's also why I had to stop drinking
Yeah.
when I was 25, because you know you burn out fast
yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
But no, it makes sense. To me, it was just like, what do you do? Like, why? It's like taking a bite out of something. It's like you're really
leaving
just
it, yeah.
you're really just gonna have a bite, or like having one chip. Like you open a bag of chips. Like you're just gonna. That's all you wanted, really.
Yeah, with other things, I absolutely think
Mm-hmm.
that way. Like any of those examples you just gave, and then like sometimes if you go to like start a basic task, I'm like, Julian, you're not gonna finish this. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right.
So it's a normal. It doesn't have to be like alcohol. It is a normal
Yeah.
human emotion with that. We don't like. You know, like you'll see someone walk in. Like if I had that picture tilted, which I'm OCD, so it never would be. But like someone might be like, no, like it needs to be set right, and they'll, without saying anything, they'll fix it. Like there's little things like that we can't look at unless it's done or like right, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm with you there.
It's wild. But there was a question I had on something you were saying about the treatment. It had to do with the 11 days thing. And then like counting down to it, because then you're like, well, this might work, and then I'll never do it again. But I'll think of it later.
Okay.
So, bottom line is, you walk in there,
Walked in. Yep.
8 a.m.
Yeah. So they drug
what
test
happens?
you. Well, first they're like, okay, they want to make sure that you're like mentally in a good spot too. Like you can't come in and then, you know, if you're in like in a bad place and they give you psychedelics,
Not good.
it could make it worse. But I mean, as long as they know that you're in a bad place, like, okay, at least we're gonna know how to prepare for this. And but I went in there, I was like, no, I'm scared, I'm nervous, because I don't know. Like I thought I was gonna have trouble differentiating reality, and that's what I'm like. I'm gonna be stuck in like some 3D movie that is, you know, gonna be it's gonna be frightening, and I'm not gonna know that it's just the psilocybin.
I think, I can't remember if you told me this on the podcast or right before, but am I correct when you said you hadn't ever done psychedelics before?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So I didn't know also.
But other drugs. Was there ever other stuff besides alcohol that you had done?
There was some, but not hallucinogens.
Like blow and shit like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was a totally new territory for you.
Which is, you know, and by the way, you could overdose from blow. You can't.
Oh, yeah.
You can't overdose.
Yeah.
From eating mushrooms. I didn't know that until she was some doctor from Yale. She was doing an OCD study and cluster headaches.
Cluster headaches?
Yeah, apparently they're these like bad migraines, but apparently psilocybin helps a lot of these folks. So it's I mean, the potential of what else this could treat. But she said like you can overdose on Tylenol.
I just heard someone saying that
Right.
today. A friend of mine was talking about that. Like it's not even like, I forget the number of pills they said.
It's not even
So I
that
won't say it, but
insane, or what?
It's not
that
crazy. It's not like 50.
No,
right?
yeah.
It's a lot lower.
That's crazy.
Nuts,
But
man.
she said your stomach physically can't contain the amount of mushrooms it would take, psilocybin mushrooms it would take, to overdose. And when I heard that, I was like,
We're going to be good.
I'm like, that's interesting. Well, I heard that recently. So with this, they didn't even give me mushrooms. They gave me pharmaceutical grade psilocybin. So there was a pill, and so right after they're doing the screening, and they drug test you, make sure like nothing else is in your system. And then you talk to the two therapists there, and you go around the room saying, okay, what do you want to get at? What's your intention out of this today?
Oh, the other people are in there with you.
The two, the medical doctor and the, like in this case, I think it was a licensed social worker.
Right, but that's it. So the way you said that, I thought you were saying like other patients were in there too.
No.
So when you go around the room, there you're saying the doctors are also saying what they want to get out of it.
Yeah. No. It's really intensive because it's two of them, and they're supervising you for those 6-8 hours.
And they're not tripping; they're completely sober.
No.
Yeah. So, but they're saying what they want to get out of it, like as a ritual, or
I think it helps kind of like set the intentions. So for me, it calmed me down because they were like, I just want you to get, I want to be supportive and help you get wherever you need to be, and I'll be there for you if you need anything, if you have any difficulty and I'm like, all right, this is like, I'm not on my own here. They're going to be watching me. They got the equipment and stuff. We're in a hospital.
Imagine if they just like turned to you like, yeah, we're going to be right there with you, man. And popped it.
Well, there are some people that do that, like these underground facilitators.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Which I get a lot of bad calls from people telling me that, these facilitate, like these guys they have no medical backgrounds or anything. And they're telling these desperate people, you got to stop all your meds, cold turkey, and you got, and I'm like, and some of these people call me and they're like, I've been depressed for 10, 20 years. I've never been suicidal until I stopped all my meds. And I'm like, this is...
Oh, because it fucks their... I'm going to mess up the words, but it fucks up all their passages in their brain. And they feel...
Yeah, this is just stopping your prescribed medication cold turkey without a doctor. So, like, if you're going to stop it, if your doctor tells you to stop it, they'll put you usually on, like, some regimen where you're weaning off it and lowering the dosage. But you get, these people that's crazy. But I've heard stories where they're trying to do this, like, at retreats or something, and then the guide or whatever they call the practitioner does it with them, and I'm like, it's not like we're watching the same movie here.
No,
I mean, I kind of want someone to be to be around. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm just imagining if they had actually done that and been like, yeah, we're going to be right there with you. Let's pop it. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, that's not what I signed up for.
No, that would... And I don't know if I would have done that. Done that study if they were like, by the way, the doctors are going to be doing this with you. I'm like, no. I'd rather just have like...
Tell me I'm going to be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Like some... But no, it's a wacky, wild... ride with all of that, and basically you take the pill and then you're there for like a half hour, 40 minutes, and then it kicks in.
Where are you?
So you're now lying down on the couch. You're still in the same room. They have like a couch set up.
You're at the hospital?
Yeah.
At NYU?
Yeah, at Bellevue. They were doing this at Bellevue, which is on
right there.
20
Kips Bay.
Yeah.
First Avenue?
That's it, yep.
Gotcha. I'll put a map in the corner for people to see.
And, yeah. So, and I think there was some history there with it being like some sort of psych ward back in the day.
It had been if I remember correctly, Bellevue was at least some sort of site for some quote-unquote abuses. If I'm getting that wrong, let me know in the comments. But I think it was like it had some controversial stuff there with a couple doctors and like some mental patients that were sent there, I think.
So it's got some like spooky history too.
Is that where they shot? That's not where they shot the Godfather scene where Michael's in the hospital with his father. I don't think it was at Bellevue.
Oh, what?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it was, I don't know why.
Because it had those steps,
that.
right?
Yeah. That wasn't it. I don't know why, like something in the photographic memory is putting the two together, but I don't think that's where it was filmed.
Okay.
But that's where you were, basically.
That's
You're on
where
a
I
couch.
was. Yeah, you're on a couch, and you got an eye mask on. You got headphones like this on with like classical music.
Oh yeah, they're playing you. I read about this.
Yeah.
So did they choose the playlist? I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And that actually had a lot of impact too, on what, the music could change, and then like so could your experience. It was why, unlike the shape, if you're seeing shapes and stuff, it could be changing with the music. Like that's how it started. I started. It was like I was looking through a kaleidoscope, and I'm like, but it didn't really hit me yet. I'm like, oh, these are just the shapes. I wonder when the drugs are gonna kick in, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, but you don't usually see these, every day, like.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to. It was a double blind too, so meaning half the patients got a placebo, and the other half got the psilocybin.
Are they all doing it in other rooms at the same time, or is this?
No.
Yeah, they're all different days.
All different
there's not many
days.
doctors.
Yeah, and it's like an all day thing too. I think all day. They might be able to squeeze in like 2 in a day, but I doubt it. And this took like 7 years. This was 7 years ago. But yeah, they, you start seeing, so half the patients get the placebo, which, sucks. But, at least the last session, they get an open label is what they call it. So everyone gets the psilocybin the last time. So at least the people that got the placebo the first 2 times get to experience it the last time, which is nice, because that might be enough. Like I stopped drinking after my first session, after this one.
That's crazy.
Which is not when I'm trying literally everything else that's available. I've tried, and multiple times, mainly. Nothing worked. And then I do this thing. Like I saw, there was a visual that it was like the, monumental vision of that session, and it was a glass bottle, a glass liquor bottle in the desert, just alone in the desert, and then all of a sudden the liquor bottle disintegrates into the sand, and I was just like, oh wow, this is kind of corny, but I was like, this is my, addiction leaving me. And I felt, and it was weird because after that, I was like, okay, this is, like, I felt good about that. I'm like, all right, this is reassuring. Like, and that's, almost what it took, like, just something like that, which is crazy.
All right. Wow. There's a lot on the bone from that. That's a hell of an image. That took like a second for that to settle in for me, with the liquor bottle in the desert and your addiction leaving you. That's fucking powerful, man. But at the beginning of it, just like how did we get there? You mentioned that you sat down, they gave you, it was a pill, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is 9 a.m. or something. They've done all the pre-checks.
Around that, yep.
You're in there. You went around in a circle, the doctor, the therapist, and you, what you all wanted to get out of it. You're on this couch. They give you the pill. You swallow it. Now, what does the process look like? So you lay down on the couch with the mask on. They put classical music in your ears. How long did it take before you started like, oh, consciously, yeah, I'm tripping?
Yeah. So they give you the pill. They're like, and you don't have to lay down right away because it takes 30, 40 minutes maybe for you to start feeling anything. So you're just hanging out, making like small talk if you want for like the next 10, 15 minutes. And then they'll be like, I remember Dr. Bogenschutz was like, okay, I think we're getting to that time where it's going to start, kicking in or something. So maybe, or it could start kicking in because it's a double blind. So why don't you, and the doctors don't know. I think the only person that knows is the pharmacist. doing, giving it all out. So
he is trained, obviously, for the placebo actual experiment here, where some people are going to get that. He's trained to be able to be like, all right, well, we're this far in, so I need to say that it could be close, and then see how they react.
Yeah, and I remember talking to another one of the participants, but he had the placebo. So he was just there the whole day. He was like, I took a nap. Like, I mean, what else am I going to do on that couch? And
yeah, who would
I'm just
thinking,
trying to think, like, what would I do, right?
This is such a powerful experience. Like, people, you were educated on it at this point. Like, you lose reality necessarily, like, right in front of you, and you're hallucinating things. So I'm kind of wondering, like, is this the kind of thing where people actually would believe they're hallucinating things? Like, I could see a placebo with, like, alcohol, like when they do that and they tell you, like, oh, you're drinking something, but you're not really drinking something. You're in a social environment. You start feeling like, oh, maybe I am loosening up, but you're not. Whereas with this, it's like, yeah, if you're not, like, going to another fucking world somewhere, you probably know.
Right.
Right?
And, yeah, for the most part. And then the doctors were like, there are still, like, for me, the doctors knew I got it the first time. For me, I wrote down, because we had to do these questionnaires after too. I think I wrote down, I'm like 95% sure, not, that I got it. I was pretty sure I got it. I saw that liquor bottle in the deck. I was seeing stuff, but also a part of me was just trying to not jinx anything. I'm like, don't rush to conclusions. Let's just try to get this and go forward.
So he says to you, it's about that time. And what, like, do you remember everything, or is it more just like moments and images?
Moments and images. And this was back in 2015.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But when I hear other people talk about their experiences, and whether it's Johns Hopkins or, I'm like, wow, I felt the same way, or wow, which is fascinating, because I was watching, like, an interview with someone who did this back in the 1950s, and they were recording the person.
The CIA, MK Ultra.
And yeah, right. That's also, I think this was probably around the same time as MK Ultra, but I don't know, weren't they just putting it in, like, spiking the punch?
I forget.
They were
was a lot
definitely
of things
studying
they did.
it, right?
Yeah.
But that started from all that research. They were like, okay, this could cure. This is curing a lot of alcoholism in these patients. This is, so they saw the potential there, and rightfully so. And why wouldn't the CIA want to research that and see what else they could do with it?
Sure, if they get some side things like that, why not?
You got it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful compound that's making these positive impacts. Let's see if there are any negative impacts or any, other altercation.
They wanted to see if they could control minds. That was their goal with that, and that was the dark goal of it. But they realized they couldn't with it. And I would imagine that, because I'm sure they had a lot of bright people in there studying what was going on, I would imagine they probably had a lot of answers that the American people still to this day haven't been educated on, where they're like, oh, well, maybe this shouldn't be a Schedule 1 substance. Maybe there's something here, you know? And then you go through something like this where and we'll talk about why this is loosening up, but you see, like, oh, wait a second. There's a real medical value to this. Yeah.
Right. And I think the two main definitions for being a classified or categorized as a Schedule 1 drug, there's it's a harmful drug, and there are no medical benefits to it. So, like, opiates, right? They're harmful, but there are some medical benefits to it.
Yeah.
But with this, not only is it safer to to do than, it kills less people. It's safer to do than alcohol, any tobacco product. And it does have medical benefits. So it's, and a lot of the doctors that we're working with, they're not asking for decriminalization or anything or legalization. And they just want to get it rescheduled so they could do, loosen the barriers to more research.
The big problems that come with it are like people who believe they can fly when they're on it and then they can't fly. Things like that.
Yeah.
They can, because they're not in reality, they can accidentally harm themselves in another way that has nothing to do with the drug in their
Or
system.
harm someone else, it's right. You're driving a car, and that's why I'm always like, do not, because people reach out to me regularly and they're like, what do you think if and I never condone, they're like, do you have any underground spot? I'm like, listen, even if I did, I wouldn't feel comfortable, sending people anywhere. You got to do this in a clinical setting. And granted, I've heard a lot of stories where people have done this by themselves at home and they've had great experiences where it cured their mental illness or whatever it is. I personally do not feel comfortable telling people that's okay to do.
I think that's very smart, man.
I'd rather have people doing this with doctors in hospitals or clinical settings. So that's, but it's a real interesting, right? You got the opioid epidemic at an all-time high. And hopefully it's about that time where we're looking at these different schedules of drugs and reconsidering some of them.
Yeah, it's crazy, some of the grades they have on that stuff, and it's also dated. And the thing I worry about is that so much of traditional institutions and the ideology that backs the legal decisions that are made it's funny we're saying this right now after Roe v. Wade, but they are so stamped, right? So when better information comes out, the battle to unravel what has already been beat into the system is very, very difficult, right? Which was not an issue with Roe v. Wade. That was totally different in that case. I'm just making a joke about precedent. But with this kind of stuff, I think I had Jewish Sauce Boss in here. I think he was saying weed is still a Schedule I drug, for example.
Yeah.
Or it was coming off it, but it was at the time last year when he was here, it was still on there. I haven't even looked at that, but that's fucking crazy.
No, I think it's still, it's not federally legal right now. It's and I think it's legal in 39 states or 37. It's up there.
Meanwhile, 317 of the 450 congressmen and senators in there got a joint sitting in their desk. That's the world we're living in.
Very well could be, right? It's prohibition happened, right? And there was definitely, not everyone stopped drinking.
Yeah.
Right?
They all stopped out of nowhere, right? Fucking nuts.
So it's all, and that it's really the Wild West out there because we're seeing, right? I talk to veterans probably daily trying to get into trials or that have done this either through clinical trials or they had to go they had to leave the country to do this.
I want, and a lot of them go to Mexico, right?
Mexico, I think, Costa Rica, Peru.
I want to come back to that.
Sure.
I just want to finish your full thing because you know all this other stuff based on your foundation that you have now. I want to get to all that.
Oh, yeah.
But your actual trip. So
where were we on that? Yeah,
you were saying that you remember moments and images. It's not like you remember every second. But
that's right.
At some point, you dropped into it. So, what happened? What do you remember? What you first saw when you were like, "Oh, wow!" And did you consciously say to yourself, "This is a hallucination," or were you still have you ever gotten surgery for something?
Yeah.
Okay. So when they put the thing in your system before the drug
and
that knocks you out?
Yeah, what's going on?
And they're like, you'll
count
usually
down from 10 or what?
Before that, I'm saying they put in a thing that soothes you, It's like no, sorry, no pun intended here, but it's like you had an amazing drink, kind of, right?
So getting you like a little tipsy, a little light, you're like, oh, okay. You're floating around.
In the moment, you feel good.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm going to remember all this, but then you don't. And what you do remember is when the doctor's like, oh, yeah, he's getting there. And then they stick the thing in your system where they say count down from 10 and you remember nothing.
Yeah.
Is it like the way I'm picturing in my head is the psychedelic experience is more or less something like that thing before the thing that knocks you out? Like as far as like you remember a little bit, but it's hazy.
That's what I thought too. I thought I was kind of just gonna black out for some of it, or like wake up, in a totally different world. For the most part, I pretty much knew where I was the whole time, even at the peaks of this. So that was and I remember, I think during the first session or maybe the second, but I looked at myself because I was also a journalist at this point. I knew, first of all, how crazy this whole clinical trial was, like just this whole story was, because this is when the opioid epidemic was, I think it had hit all-time highs, and there were like more deaths this year from overdoses alone than the whole Vietnam War. And right, you're like, okay, that's just 1 year, and this is, so I'm thinking, this is just wild research. Being a Schedule 1 psychedelic can cure an addiction to drugs. I mean, I thought that was insane and so far-fetched that, okay, it's so crazy, maybe this could work. And so I was looking at myself as a research subject. So with the doctors in the room, I'm trying to it was like I was an astronaut on the moon or something, or like on some different planet reporting back to NASA, like what I'm seeing in real time. And I remember, I think it was Bogenschutz again. I think he was just like, okay, why don't, we appreciate all of that info. You don't have to tell, why don't you just focus and be present in this time right now and work on, get whatever you want out of it, and then you could tell us all about it later. And
so
I'm
you
like,
remember
okay.
some of the back and forth you had.
Yeah, oh yeah. And then I remember he also, so I was afraid of the bad trip, right? And what a bad trip is, it's just an uncomfortable experience. And when I was concerned about that, the doctor said, believe it or not, the study participants that had these bad experiences or challenging experiences actually got more out of it than if they just enjoyed the whole thing. Because with those challenging things coming up, and they're coming up for a reason, you want to work on it, there's something there that it subconsciously or consciously, it's coming up for a reason. So once you address all of that, and if you don't fight it, you can't run away from this stuff. So if there's an uncomfortable experience, like for me, it was just like, oh man, what I put my parents through, what I put my, family, friends through that were worried about me.
How does that manifest?
And
during
this?
Well,
it's amplified. So, and that's the thing with this tree. I thought I'd be watching like a 3D movie.
Yeah.
And I think it was because I had the eye mask on too. I didn't see as many visuals as I thought I would, but it was really just amplifying all of my emotions. So when I'm happy, I'm really happy. When I'm, sad or scared or frightened, I'm really, it exacerbates those feelings and emotions too. So it really just amplifies, it's a roller coaster. So when I was feeling like the tough stuff for me was realizing like your parents are doing you were so lucky to have be born to the best parents, best family. They've done everything for you, and you're putting them through hell doing this. And that's when I was just like, it's totally not worth. Like, I feel terrible. My parents feel terrible. Like, this could all get solved if I just stopped drinking. It was basically just that simple.
What makes it so different? Because I've never done a trip myself, and it's something that over the last couple of years I've really been interested in doing at some point. Obviously, you condone only medical, whatever. So let's hedge with that.
We'll look for clinical trials. They're doing it for healthy normals.
Really?
If you don't, yeah. One of my co-founders, he was in a study participant at Johns Hopkins. Did it for healthy normals, is what they called it. So they just wanted to see the effects of psilocybin on a healthy person.
Sign me up, dog. I'll go take it with Doc Ross over here.
Right?
He and I'll have a time. Yeah, but it's the point is, like, it's something I've thought about a lot, but because I've never done it,
yeah.
I understand that, like, the people who are in it, they can explain so much, but it's not, you can't really understand until you do. So, like, when you're talking about the visuals,
yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think of the times where I've been, like, really baked on, like, great weed. And there's, like, small, like, wonderful hallucinations and whatever. But it's not, like, you're still very present. You know, it's more like I'm here in the room and I'm seeing it in my mind. And it's not, it doesn't feel like it's right there. With this stuff, when you actually see that visual and you have the mask on, so you're, like, you're blinded. But when you're seeing that visual of the liquor bottle in the desert, I can't get that out of my head. It's like an amazing visual, just exploding, and you realizing in the moment, that's my addiction leaving me. And it's almost like this summary of all these other things you said, like what I put my parents through, and oh my God, it's simple. The way to end this is to stop alcohol. Oh my God, there it goes, out the bottle.
Yeah, it was
like,
that easy.
Is it that same thing where, like, therapist and doc are right here, even if you're not seeing them, but you are literally just seeing the mask in front of you, but in the back of your mind, you can see that full visual? Like, how would you...
Oh, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it's almost like a lucid dream. Like, you know, you're dreaming, or even just daydreaming, like you're visualizing something. It wasn't, I didn't think I was literally in the desert. Like, I knew I was on the couch, but I was seeing it, and I thought, you know, it was still so impactful that it, you know, stopped my drinking or stopped my cravings, or that was the moment where I'm like, okay, I think this will work. So it was almost like that. It was all, and I told the doctor that during it, and he said, I was like, it's almost like watching a movie or something, or being in a lucid dream. And he's like, yeah, it's almost like you're in your own movie, and you know, you're an actor in this own movie, and you could, you know, steer it wherever you want. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Okay.
But that concept you're talking about feeling the I'm saying it different than you did, so I'm putting some words in your mouth.
Like amplifying the different emotions?
Yes,
okay.
You said it way better.
Yeah,
so, like, the amplifying sadness, happiness, fear.
Sure, yeah.
All these different things. When someone who hasn't done this is listening, let's say as a cynic, and they're going, okay, so you took a drug and you were at least aware it was happening while it was going on.
Yeah.
Your emotions were a little amplified.
Yep.
You got a cute little vision. I'm talking like a cynic right now.
No.
You got a cute little vision, and suddenly now you're just like, I guess I'm not going to drink anymore. They may say, well, why the fuck couldn't you just do that when you're not taking a drug? Which is a total asinine question, but not to other people.
No, I think that's a fair question. And I probably asked that going into, like, why can't I just do this without, right? But what the doctors refer to the psilocybin as, they call it psilocybin assisted therapy. So
I thought you were going to say suicide for a second.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
That would, you know,
not
the
good.
FDA would shut that down yesterday. I mean, so the assisted part, it's just psilocybin assisted therapy, meaning that, you know, the psilocybin's what they refer to this as a tool in their toolkit. So it's just another thing, and I'm a total believer in this. After I did it, it really just expedited this whole process. And I've heard a lot of people say, and I'd agree with this too, that it feels like decades of psychotherapy crammed in an afternoon. And I just went through all of this. It was like a crash course, and I remember leaving, and I'm just like, wow, I'm going to be fine. Like, I'm going to be okay. To the point where it's been, 7 years since 2015. I left 2016, but my first session was late 2015. And
so you did multiple sessions?
Yeah. So I did 3 sessions over the course of a year. The clinical trial was about a year long.
And it was the same thing every time?
Yeah, I think they upped the milligrams on the second session.
So you never got a placebo?
No. So
wow.
So if you're in the psilocybin group, you're gonna get that the second time too. So if you get it the first time, if you get the placebo the first time, you're getting the placebo the second time. And the last session out of 3, that's the open label where everyone gets the psilocybin.
Oh, so once you hit the jackpot on number 1, you're good. You're getting it every time.
I mean, yeah. So, and they asked me if I wanted to do, and by that time, I knew I was done drinking.
And this is the first session.
Oh no, this is the third session, but the first what we're talking about now with this is the first.
Right. So that's the first session. You see that glass. Like you got in there at 8. Let's say they gave it to you at 9.
Okay.
How long's the trip?
So I was probably done around it started wearing off at 3 p.m. I think it only really peaked for it was intense for a few hours, 2 to 3 hours. It was.
Did it feel a lot longer than that?
I think parts of it.
Okay. So it starts to,
because you do lose concept of time with a lot of this.
Sure.
But yeah, no, it's.
So it starts to fade at 3, but then it takes a little while to fade. So how long when did they say, okay, you can walk out of the room now?
Someone had to pick you up. So for me, it was my dad. He came by, because we live in the city. So he came by, picked me up, and that was it. They can't, I remember I was just like, do I really have to be here for the next 2 hours and I think I had to fill out more form, more sheet. I mean, that's how they get a lot of the data too.
They ask you questions right away.
Yeah, all these questionnaires. Did you,
what kinds of things?
I think on that one it was where would you rank this experience as the most important, for importance of your life? And I was probably the most important experience of my life. This saved my life.
Right away, you're thinking this.
I think I said that for the first one.
So while you're in there, still coming down off the drug,
yeah,
you're I know I'm cured.
I was pretty sure it wasn't definitive, but I was 85% sure that I was. And the very next day when I went in for the debrief is what they call it, where you tell the doctors what you saw, what I was trying to do during it, and the doctor told me, he's come back, let's go over it tomorrow, or for the debrief. So when I came back for that, I told the doctors, I said, if I left this clinical trial early and I didn't finish it, and I left it today and walked out that door and never saw you guys again, I wouldn't be surprised if I never drank again. So after the first time, which is crazy because of the amount of struggling I was, trying to find all of this.
When your dad picked you up, did he take you back to your apartment or his place?
I was with my parents. They brought me back there.
And then the next day, you go to the debrief.
You go to the debrief like the net. So they say you should, at least when I was there, they were like, you should take the morning off, or not the morning or the whole day if you can. So I took the whole day off. I was like, I'm never using vacation days anyway. I'm like,
oh, you're still in the middle of work with all this.
Yeah.
It's not like, wow.
So I took.
You're working at the street still?
Yeah, for this I was, yeah.
Wow.
And no one knew.
They didn't know what you were doing.
No, I mean, it wasn't interfering with work or anything. And I kept like getting promoted during all of this. And the doctors are like, you think there might be a correlation? That I'm like,
things are great,
maybe.
man.
Yeah.
Wow. So you go, here's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 sessions, you said it's over about a year.
Yeah, 54 weeks, I think.
Okay, so roughly every 18 weeks or
so
no, every 26, 27 weeks.
Well, they took about 6 months off or so.
Okay.
So that was for the, I think that was for the double blind. They want to see who out of the placebo group is going to relapse at what rates, and who out of the psilocybin group is going to relapse. So you do the first 2 sessions, right?
And they're expecting honesty with that too. Obviously.
Yeah.
Which you're incentivized. It's a you're incentivized to.
Yeah,
tell
it's
the
all
truth.
anonymous, and I don't, and I was pretty honest with them, because before that, like during the trial with, the weeks leading up to my first session, I slipped up a couple of times, and I told them, and they're very easy to talk to. So they're not going to scold you or anything. If anything, they're supportive. Yeah. So and I think that's the right way, or else you're going to get people lying. I don't want to get,
Yeah, you want good. They need good data for this to be a thing. Then everyone should be incentivized to do that. As a patient, I know I would want to be, but I understand if some people are like embarrassed of some stuff. Well, I want it to work, or I want them to think it worked. I always think like that, but. You go to this debrief though. Like, when did you go back to your apartment for the first time? After that?
Oh no! At this time, I was still at my parents' place.
Oh, so you were living with them?
Yeah. So thank God, I would have been.
Okay. All right. That changes my question.
Maniac. Yeah. No.
So
I was.
When you went back that night. I'm thinking of people, places, and things right now, right?
Yeah.
Your parents' apartments where you've been drinking and stuff. So the night of your trip, you go back there, you're coming down off these drugs. You didn't think like the liquor cabinet's over there?
Yeah, no. I mean, I didn't want to drink pretty much ever after that point, which is crazy.
When you say pretty much.
So there were times where I'd think, oh, a drink might be good here.
Like what kinds of things?
But like I could be at work or something, like, oh, like maybe I'll go to this thing after work with, some of my friends or something, and a drink might be good there, but I don't really want one. Like, it's not enough for me to act on it. So the cravings didn't just go away overnight, but they significantly reduced to where I wasn't acting on these cravings. And then after the second session, that really did it. Like permanently, I was like, I will never drink again. Like I know it wholeheartedly right after that second session.
So those 6 months though in between, this is when those thoughts would come in where like, oh, I could go to that thing, but it wasn't strong enough for you to act on it.
No, sorry. So the first session and the second session, I think, were separated by about a month.
Oh, it wasn't 6 months?
No, so the 6-month break was between the second and the third session.
So you really did this over because it was 3 sessions, right?
It was 3 sessions.
So you did it over 30 weeks as opposed to or 35 weeks as opposed to 54.
Yeah, right. You're subtracting those 24 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for that break with no contact with the doctors, they want to see who's relapsing and who's not.
the 6 months after the second one.
Yeah, because the third and final session is not the double blind anymore. That's the open label where they give everyone psilocybin if they want it.
Right.
And every time they were like, you don't have to take this if you don't want to. They were never pressuring anyone into taking this. And at that point, I was like, this already cured my alcoholism for that third and final one.
But you said after the second one, you felt like, because you're saying going into it.
Going into the third.
Got it.
I was like, what else could I work on? Maybe like stress or something, work-related stress, or just like, so I wasn't even, like at this time, I was playing with like house money. And I was...
Free trip, baby.
Yeah, I was like, what else could I fix? I'm like,
But why was it so you... Whatever happened in between those first and second for that month, you didn't give in to any of these urges, and you clearly felt like, damn, I think this might work.
Yeah.
But then it's still only a month.
Yeah.
I still, the good devil's advocate to play is like, well, your head might be telling you, I want this to work. Because you were a guy, again, who had been able to go weeks without drinking before.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that could have been, right?
So then the second time, what makes you say it was definitive?
So we upped the milligrams too a little bit, and it was, and that made it more challenging. So like, right, more bad trips, quote unquote. And I don't like to I don't even like to refer to these sessions as trips, because that's a whole point of, destigmatizing all of this too.
Yeah.
But that, it was more challenging, so it's more powerful. And I remember that's where I had the death experience too.
Yeah, what happened there?
So it was it's strange, but it was like real time. I'm watching myself lying down on that couch, like bird's eye view, and I just see, it was like almost like a ceremonial or sacrificial, like, death of like a sword just going through my neck. Like I'm lying down on the couch and like just died right there. And I felt
and
death.
Everything.
Yeah. I don't know how graphic it was, but I just remember like me just dying and me watching it in real time. Which is a weird, like, this is all strange.
But this wasn't a bad trip? I would think that's a part of a bad trip.
Ironically, strangely enough, that was the most peaceful part of the trip. And I think that's like me starting a new chapter, like cleaning, killing off my old self or killing off my problems. And this is like a new you.
So the first time you kill the alcohol itself, the second time you kill you.
I guess, yeah.
Reborn.
Right?
That's
it was kind of like a rebirth of sorts. Not to get, biblical, but it was almost like something like that. And
well, they say that's what the burning bush was. The burning bush was most likely a psilocybin trip. So that's in a biblical vein right there.
I saw that they think psychedelics had an impact on Greek mythology and religion.
I don't know much about the Greek mythology aspect
of
it.
With the gods and the Zeus and.
Yeah, keep talking. I'm going to Google that while you're talking.
Google the Illusion Mysteries.
The Illusion.
ELEUS.
Oh, it's like Elysian?
Oh,
there it is. That right there? Where the...
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to read the top of Wikipedia for people.
Right.
But it's ELEUSINIAN Mysteries. Were initiations held every year for the cult of Demeter and Persephone. All right, we're going to skip down.
Yeah.
The rites, ceremonies, and beliefs were kept secret and consistently preserved the antiquity For the initiated, the rebirth of Persephone symbolized the eternity of life flows from generation to generation, and they believed that they would have a reward in the afterlife. There are many paintings and pieces of pottery that depict various aspects of the mysteries. Since the mysteries involve visions and conjuring of the afterlife, some scholars believe that the power and longevity of the illusion mysteries, a consistent set of rites, ceremonies, and experiences that spawned 2 millennia, came from psychedelic drugs. And what was the thing? It said they're the most famous secret religious rites in Greece that were initiated. This is what I was starting to read. Initiations held every year for the cult of Demeter and Persephone, based at the Panhellenic sanctuary of Eleusis. My fucking friend Nico's going to kill me for these pronunciations. in Asian Greeks. Malaka, it's Eleusis. I can hear him right now.
Yeah.
I read that part. They're the most famous secret. So read up more on it, because there's a lot here. I don't want to bore people just reading the whole thing. But essentially, I guess what they're getting at is that the basis of this had to do with some sort of mushroom then, no?
I think it was ergot, which is...
What's that?
I think it's a grain or it's like a barley or something. But ergot is similar. I think that's what LSD is derived from. So... they found it in the chalices or the pots that they would drink out. They found some residue of that. And also they, going into that, they think it had some influence on early Christianity too. So it's philosophy, like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they all went to the illusion mysteries. They all did that. Yeah.
What if Socrates came up with all this shit? He's just fucking tripping balls, eating mushrooms. Yo, what?
Right? Well, the guy that discovered DNA, he credits that to psychedelics. Steve Jobs, right? Yeah, right there. Steve Jobs said that was really, it was a really profound experience, and so
that iPhone's never in your hand without psychedelics.
Yeah, right.
Won't be in your hand.
So, I mean, a lot of things were created or discovered from that, which is interesting.
So you kill off. I love that visual. It's also so perfect. You kill off alcohol in round 1. You kill off your old self in round 2.
Yeah.
And you come down. So when you're coming down off the trip this time, was it a similar time frame as the last one? Or did it take longer?
Yeah, it was a little more intense. So, but I think the time frame was similar.
Okay.
And same thing, shell shock too. But I was a little, going into it, I was a little less anxious or nervous about it because I had already experienced that first session. So I was like, all right, at least I kind of get a sense of this.
Did they do everything the same, go around in a circle and say before? Or was it more like...
Yeah. It was just what do you want to get out of this? And for me, it was just I need an inner peace because I'm not happy when I'm not drinking. I'm miserable when I'm not drinking. I'm miserable when I am. I'm anxious when I am. It's I got to stop this. Mm-hmm. And those were the only two worlds I knew. So I was if I get an inner peace and calm down internally, I think the drinking will stop. I'm not going to need a drink. I think that'll gradually go away. And it did. And I'm not, I'm still a New Yorker, despite many people thinking I come from Chicago.
Dude, that was the most shocking thing we found out today. You're a lifelong New Yorker.
Yeah.
Damn.
Crazy, right?
I was so excited.
I've never been to Chicago.
You never been?
I've never even been.
You sound like you spent your whole life there.
I just flew in, right? From O'Hare? Is that that's the airport,
I think
right?
that's right. I was so excited. I'm we finally got a Chicago guy in here. That's great. And then you're hey, I'm from New York. I'm fuck, we've had 60 of those. Fucking wow.
It's tough.
But where were we before that? Sorry, I got you off that.
What the death and when I had that death experience, I was I hope the cancer patients in that study before me that were dealing with the anxiety of death, I was man, I just hope these guys got to experience that, because like it's not that you're carefree about death. It's not like I'm doing very dangerous things and living on the edge and making risky decisions. But for the most part, you're just not. You don't obsess. And I never obsessed over death or anything, or had I wouldn't obsess over death or constantly think of it. But I'm like, oh man, that's gonna suck one day, that when you're gone, or like forever, and what do you
yeah
right, what's gonna happen there, what happens after like all of that. So after experiencing this, you're a little more comfortable with it, and I mean, I'm speaking for myself obviously, but I've heard this, it's pretty common for a lot of the study participants, that they're not fearful of death as much as they are curious. Okay, what, is there an afterlife, or what happens when you die, and all that stuff. So it's an interesting take. I remember hearing a study participant that did this for anxiety and end of life cancer, and he said basically that this made it look, made him look at life just being forever grateful, as opposed to having a fear of death anymore about it, and how lucky he was that he was just given an opportunity to live and experience this world, and how beautiful it is. And so, it's all about perspective too, with a lot of things, and what's your attitude going into it.
Which again, you had the best boxes checked ever for that, because you had such a long demonstrated history of genuinely like trying everything yourself. You weren't.
Yeah.
You didn't. It sounds like it wasn't like this was intervention city left and right. You're literally like, no, I want to do this.
No, yeah.
That's awesome.
And I don't know if these clinical trials would take people if like their parents are dragging the kid, or like a spouse is dragging, their significant other to the hospital. Like, hey, can you take care of this can this person join your clinical trial? And the researchers are, I wouldn't blame them if they said, unless that person really wants to stop, we're going to give this spot to someone who really wants to make a change. So
I wonder if that's a little bit of a correlation matrix though too. Not to speak against it, because clearly, like, a lot of people want to stop and they never can. Just like you, like it never works.
Oh, no,
so this did.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the other piece of it, even for something as quote unquote powerful as this, is that someone genuinely has to want to. Like, if they don't want to, they may have the greatest trip ever, and they may have the ability to, but they're probably going to walk out of there and be like, all right, take me to the pub.
They could. So I've also heard a lot of people decrease their drinking to where they're drinking like only on holidays at family, like when they see extended family, and can have one or two drinks.
Oh, so they're controlled.
Yeah, and that might even be more impressive.
Yo, that's really impressive.
Yeah, so and I remember the doctors telling me. So I think this was in between the second and third, and I was like, how are the other patients doing? Like, and they're like, some of them like heavily decreased their drinking, significantly decreased it. And I was like, wait, that was an option? I was like, I thought this was...
Wait, I thought we were supposed to quit.
Yeah, I was like, I thought this was... I didn't see that on the menu. And I, like, for a split second, I got genuinely upset, like... You guys know I like to drink. Like, I just can't control it. I'd love to control it. Ideally, I'd have a couple of drinks and be fine. And you're telling me that's a possibility?
But then this was in between the second and third?
Yeah, the second and third.
And it didn't change your viewpoint, though?
No, it didn't, because at that point, it was already done. And also, I do think I could have a drink or two right now and be totally fine.
But you never have.
Never have. And it's a moot point, because does desire to drink on my end. And I think that's because there's no desire, I could just have one and it's not going to do much for me.
But you don't take chances with it.
No. I mean, so I was at a Yankee game with a buddy of mine, and I think I got like a ginger ale, and he got like a whiskey and soda or something, so they were the same color. And I picked up his and took a quick sip out of it accidentally, and I swallowed it, and I'm like, what the fuck is it? You know? And I put it down, and I'm like, gee, you know, this is... But
you didn't go anymore?
No, it tasted disgusting to me. And then I was just like, wow, I just drank a sip of that. Could have like 20. This might have been like a year out, 2 years out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
that didn't do anything.
That's actually. Wow.
Yeah. That didn't do anything for me, I think that was one of the milestones where I was just like, okay.
Wow.
Like
this is real.
Yeah. Other milestones. I'm right with my fiance. She drinks like socially. So someone gave her a bottle of wine and it's in our fridge. And so she had to go away for a week for work. And
what does she do?
She's in like business development, sales. And so she went away for like a week and the bottle of wine was in the fridge the whole time. And I was just like thinking to myself how crazy it is that this does. It was almost like, you know, she had kombucha in there too that has no appeal to me either. And it was just like having a second bottle of that. And I was just like, this is crazy how I'm living in it with all these, what used to be temptations. And that was my top priority of always figuring out when I'm going to drink. I mean, when I'm working, I was looking forward at the next 3-day weekend because that's how long I'd need to recover from drinking. And so I'm like, this is all, you know, predetermined stuff. And I was looking that far ahead in the calendar, figuring out, like marking my calendar. Okay, this is when I can drink.
It can sit right there and you don't.
Yeah. Like that thing used to control my life. And I used to, you know, I'd schedule everything around it. And now it's not even on my radar, which is nuts.
Now, I don't know if you said this or I heard someone else say this a couple days ago. I can't remember now because there's been a lot today. But did you say that people need to come back in like a few years later and do it again to like reset the system? Was that you saying that? I might have heard that from someone else.
I don't know. I don't think I said that.
Okay. Is that a thing though?
So I've heard that as a thing for like people doing this on their own, like going to these retreats and doing it legally in like,
with like a shaman?
The Netherlands. Yeah, or down there. So I've heard that. You wouldn't be able to do it in a clinical trial unless it was part of the protocol, but so like I couldn't.
You don't have any of that on the schedule. You don't need to.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. And that's the thing. Like a lot of people, like think I'm, like I know a lot about mushrooms or know a lot about psychedelics or know about microdosing because microdosing is a big thing now. Like that's.
Can you explain that to people?
Yeah,
who don't know?
So microdosing is when you take a small amount of usually psilocybin. Some people I think do it with LSD, and it's small enough where you're not hallucinating or anything, and you just get, you know, the, I guess, subliminal effects of this. So in theory, you could take it and be functional and like go to work or something because it's such a small amount. Like, and I've heard of people microdosing their family members. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about that. You know, I think everyone should be on board here before doing something like that. But that's how small these amounts are that you don't even notice it. But a lot of people have said this cured their depression, and when people ask me about it, I'm like, I don't know. I've heard a lot of people saying it's good. I've heard people saying it did nothing for them, and there really isn't any clinical data on it right now. So I really couldn't tell you about any of this. But yeah, no, that's a thing that's blowing up, and it should be worth exploring. Why not? I mean, we know, but most of these trials, they're giving you what they call a heroic dose. So it's enough. Yeah. And I think, Ollie said it puts you on that's my co-founder, puts you on a hero's journey. So like ups and downs, and you need to like overcome certain obstacles. And so I was like, that makes sense, because like after getting through one of those sessions, you do feel like you've accomplished something. And you're like, okay, that was tough to get through, but that was a win. Like that was like, I left everything out there. That was good.
Left it all on the field.
Left it all on the field.
So that's why that 6-month period after the second one makes so much sense to me, because just in my head, that's a long enough time for the, no pun intended, but like the hero's effect of it to potentially wear off. If someone's just trying to believe it worked, but it didn't really work.
Yeah. So
they can see like, oh, it's long enough to be like, this was legit or this was bullshit for you. So for you like the second one, you're like, I'm done. And then you went about, you were getting promotions during the whole next 6 months doing your thing. And then the third one, you were saying, you're like, well, I'm going to focus on something else for me. So like, did they say you don't need to do this one, or no, we have to finish this for the study because we need all the data the same? Like, what's the deal there?
No, they never, like, even the first two, they were like, you can back out any moment. You do not need to do this if you don't feel like it. They were very supportive in that way. Never pressured me into doing anything. And yeah, I was kind of like, I know I'm not going to drink ever again, which is crazy because that was 6 months out, but I knew it where it just took away. And I was going out, I was going to bars with friends, and
so how much you didn't change much in your life? You just stopped drinking?
No, I'm still social and stuff. I just go to bed. I'm home a lot earlier. Like I'm not going to be out that late when people start telling the same stories again, and people are too drunk. Like that's just not appealing to me.
Was it weird?
So I'm home early.
Was it weird seeing the other side? Like, because now I'm just thinking about all the times you had been in those situations before. You're plastered, so you don't know, you're just enjoying it. But now you're there, you're sober, you get to see almost like an exoskeleton what it looks like.
I mean, I was seeing some of that when I was still doing the AA thing and doing other things to stop drinking, because I would still hang out with my friends and go to these bars. And I wouldn't drink all the time there, but I'd be there and it would be tempting. So there is definitely truth in the people, places, and things part of AA and just getting sober, because I was just like, okay, I didn't want to miss the party, but then I'm not really, like, everyone's having fun, or so I think. And I mean, it still looked fun, but then when I did this with psilocybin, it was like people are like fly fishing or something, and I don't really fly fish, so I'm like, I'm not really missing much.
Wow. That's so different.
Yeah. It's something that's just kind of like, if like, think of like some hobby or something that some people do that it's not really for you, and you don't really care that you're missing it.
It's very cool. That something so, because that's why you said it yourself right there, but that's what I was thinking in my head. I'm like, this basically took the people, places, and things thing and said, don't worry about it. Like, maybe not all the way, as you said, but you got to go do things that would literally give anyone in AA a heart attack if you told them that you were doing them. Like, oh yeah, I'm in that environment, I'm cool, because of the effect this had. And it's just, again, like if you haven't done it before, like me, it's hard to understand completely, but you've done a really good job like explaining the mental reset, I think. Like how that it's almost like it rewires your brain. You come out, it's like you needed to like knock something in there, and now it's like, oh, there we go. Oh, we're good now.
Yeah, I mean, rewiring sounds scary, but I don't know if you want to pull up the photo of like psilocybin and brain, or psychedelics, and then brain on psychedelics or brain on psilocybin.
Brain on
and then
psilocybin.
There it is. So one of
this one right there.
Yeah, that works too.
I'll put this in the corner of the screen for people.
Yeah. So the brain on the left, right? That's your brain right now, not on psychedelics or psilocybin. The brain on the right,
that looks a lot more fun.
Yeah, is your brain on psilocybin, and what it's doing there is, you see how there are different parts of the brain, like red, blue, green. Yeah. Those are different sections, and they're parts of the brain that usually don't. It's compartmentalized, a lot of it, and parts of the brain that usually don't interact are starting to communicate with each other. And so I think that's why there's a lot of like out of the box ideas, or thinking, hence these Nobel Prize winners and these new inventions. And
this is why I want to do it. I'm looking at it right now.
There definitely could be, potential for, you don't need to have a mental health disorder to get a benefit out of this. And so with me, I think it just gave me a different perspective during that. And it's fascinating, because where other drugs, you can experience these different emotions or feelings, or thoughts or ideas would come to you, and then the next morning it usually wears off. It's like you get really drunk and you have a great idea. I got $1 billion idea, or I got this idea is great. Yeah. And then you wake up and you read notes from the night before. You're like,
that's the dumbest shit ever.
That's kind of embarrassing. Like you're burning that and discarding of that. But with psychedelics, if like for therapeutic uses, you have these experiences, and then you take them with you even when the drugs wear off. So it's really interesting how that works.
A question I've always wanted to answer for myself is what the parallels are, and you've talked about this a bit today, but like how real it is. The disconnect. It's not the right word, but it's going to work. The disconnect parallels of like a good psychedelic trip versus a very dense dream with a lot of unrealistic things that happen in it. Like, it's funny, like we'll sleep I forget what the exact date is, but most nights we sleep, when you think about it, like you don't dream. But then a lot of nights, or not a lot of nights, the nights you do, you're like, whoa, and then you can forget it quickly too, because you weren't really there. And you're like, wait, what was that?
And they say write it down as soon as you wake up. And,
yep.
Because you'll forget it.
Yeah. So like, is that a real legitimate type parallel feeling?
I wouldn't be surprised. For me, this was more of a lucid dream, is how I explained it. Because, like going into the first session, the doctors, I would ask, okay, how do other study participants feel? What, can they talk about what the experience is like? Can you talk about what their experiences were like? And so they were like, it's tough for people to put this into words.
Right.
And as a journalist, when I'm writing my own, stories and stuff, and I'm like, how do you, like, how can you not put something in words? How can't you describe something and explain it that happened firsthand to you. You had a firsthand account of this, and you cannot explain this until I did it. And that's what they call explaining the ineffable. It's very difficult to put some of these experiences into words.
I'd say it's probably, for some of it, actually impossible.
Could be,
go that far.
Oh, sure.
Because, like, look at the brain right there. Look at this picture you had me.
Right.
You had me pull up.
Have you ever seen? You haven't seen
I've
that one?
never seen this. This is great.
I think it was Carhart Harris that did this one. He's a UCSF British guy.
But you can see on it, like, all the little intricacies of that are the difference between a sketch and a masterpiece. You know, between the regular brain and the full brain.
Uh-huh.
And I forget how many words are in, for example, the English language. But it's not sufficient to look at all the possible nooks and crannies and combinations that you're seeing right there.
Yeah.
That's part, I think it is a literal, if I'm guessing out loud here on the podcast, it is probably actually related to some sort of literal mathematical representation of the fact that words only have so many of them.
Yeah.
And you can't adequately be able to express, even with the most descriptive, beautiful words, as the best writer in the world, you can't adequately express those feelings. So guys like creatives, not just writers, but like people who come up with wild shit, and they came up with it like Steve Jobs did through like crazy trips on stuff. The manifestation of how they explain these things occurs in the thing they create. Right? So like Steve Jobs holds the iPhone and he can explain this part. He wants the screen to feel like an infinity pool.
Yeah.
But like, where is that infinity pool? What's it a part of? Who swam in it? What does he see actually when he's looking at the blank screen when the phone's on lock? Because he's not just seeing a blank screen.
Yeah.
That part, you never heard him explain that because he can't.
Yeah.
And that I'm guessing, I don't know, didn't know Steve Jobs, but that could be tied to like this lack of description on it. You know what I mean?
Could be. Absolutely.
Fucking nuts, man.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, after your own story here, this is what I really like. You got into the medical research side of this for like everything, it sounds like, as far as like treating other things like depression, PTSD, all that.
Yeah.
So can you tell people about your organization and what it's called, first of all, and like when you formed it and what you guys specifically work on?
Yeah, sure. So it all started, so the doctors, and I was given interviews anonymously, because I was still at my job at that point, and the doctors would say, this reporter with this newspaper publication, or so I'd give them an interview as a study participant doing this.
Did you do it in person or over the phone?
I don't know. I think I did some in person. But even over the phone, they knew, like Michael Pollan wrote that famous book, How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, it came to the mainstream through that.
Somebody just told me about that on a podcast, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Or maybe it was off podcast, someone who's coming on. But
well, they have, there's a docu-series on it now, too. The book was so popular.
It was you. You told me about that. Yes, duh. Okay.
Makes sense then.
No,
okay.
Makes sense.
So it just came out, and so that I was doing these interviews, and then they said, okay, there's 60 Minutes wants to do a story. Anderson Cooper's doing it. Can you do it? And I looked at them. I'm like, are you nuts? Like go on national television and say, and I was more concerned about the psychedelics part. I wasn't concerned about the alcoholism part, because I think also at that point I wasn't insecure about being a former alcoholic. I'm like, I handled it. I'm done.
You told a lot of people about it.
What?
Like people in your life, like friends and casual friends.
And people who, I wasn't shouting it from the rooftops. I was telling people that might need it, or
but you're also going out to places and not drinking too, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of know.
They kind of know, but I mean, people, and this is what I also realized, people don't really care about, anyone else. Like people are, right? All our insecurities, like most people don't care about our own personal insecurities. So the drinking part, like some people notice, like, oh, he's taking it easy. But for the most part, no one really cared that. I mean, people were rooting for me, like my close friends, like, yeah, thank God. But
no, let me grab this whiskey.
yeah, but no, what I do, I'm irrelevant for everyone else. So, but after the 60 minutes thing, I asked I'm like, if you can't find anyone else, I'll do it. And then I had some survivor's guilt too, because. Right, it was a double blind. I got the psilocybin. That means someone else didn't get it. And I felt like I was taking it from another patient. And
oh, shit.
Yeah, I had some guilt there.
But they all get it on the third try.
They get it on the third time, but...
They only get one.
They only get one, and what if it doesn't work there? And, so I felt bad about that. And that's where I made this promise to myself, and I made a deal with God. I'm like, if I get the psilocybin and this works for me, I'm going to do everything I can to make this accessible for other people. Because I knew the FDA, the DEA, all of that. There were a lot of obstacles and hurdles these doctors had to go through and over and around to make this accessible. And, just the stigma itself of it and the misinformation out there. That not only do we have a veteran suicide epidemic, an opioid epidemic, an addiction epidemic. I mean, alcoholism went up during the pandemic.
No,
mental illness,
really?
Right? Mental illness overall went up during the pandemic. I mean, this is the silver lining. This could save millions of lives as soon as it's approved.
Fucking crazy that people didn't. Like, there are some people who thought, like, oh, yeah, everything will be fine. We'll lock everyone inside, and they'll be fucking fine. They won't touch drugs or alcohol. Like, of course it skyrocketed. It's just...
What else are you going to do?
Exactly. Like, that was so wild to me.
I was thinking about it. I was like, I drink myself to death. I mean, what else? You can't go out. Like, you got nothing else going on. I mean, that's got to be difficult for people living alone or struggling with other stuff prior or during. So at least this is the silver lining. This could help. Like, the research suggests anorexia, OCD, PTSD, depression, anxiety. What else? I think they're looking this guy that I met, his business partner his son saw the 60 minutes episode that I was in, and then had it in his mind to go check it out to see if this could maybe help with autism. And the kid's like maybe in his early 20s, I think.
Psychedelics help autism.
So, and I've talked to a few other people, that are on the spectrum, and they credit this with turning their lives around. They can be social. They know how to interact with people. And even if you don't, have autism or Asperger's, like it's tough interacting with people, especially after the pandemic when you're not talking to people or doing that every day. That could be anxious. So, I mean...
Are they saying it can cure it?
So I think, well, at least for these folks, it helps them in social settings. So social anxiety... it helps them relate, make conversation, and that, I mean, that's a big step.
The main difference to me, like in my gorilla brain right now, trying to process this, is like when people are freaking out about stuff, jokingly, but also like half seriously, I'll be like, just smoke a little weed, relax.
Yeah, and calm down.
Right. But like, then they do. And they're relaxed while they do it if they're not someone who has like a poor weed trip, if that's what you want to say. But like once it's off, the effects are over and they may still have the same problems the next day.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, that change stays.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's so hard to wrap your head around.
Well, I think so. And that's a big misconception that a lot of people think you just take the psilocybin or the psychedelic and then you're fine. That's not the case. the integration, so that psychotherapy after your psychedelic session, that's really where the change comes from.
Now, were you doing that in the 1 month and 6 months between the two?
Yeah, I was not between the second and third sessions when you have
nothing, right?
So you don't, no contact with the doctors, no nothing. But after the, I think 2 or 3 weeks after the first and after the second, you do that. You do maybe a couple of sessions, psychotherapy.
Only a couple.
Yeah, and
After
then
the third.
you go in. Yeah,
And then you're done.
you're done, and that's going back to what we're doing now. One of the things we launched is because a lot of the folks coming out of these trials are still kind of confused on what they just experienced and how what it right. If you can't even explain it in words, it could be confusing for a lot of people. So we launched a group integration program where we have folks from clinical trials all over the country, and we're meeting once a month, and it's been helping a lot of those folks with the integration going forward.
When did you launch this again? Like what year? Like how long after the trip also as well?
I think it was 2020. So after the trip, I was pretty much doing most of what we're doing now, but behind the scenes. So I'll go to clinicaltrials.gov, look at any clinical trials near the person, see if there are any for PTSD, if that's what they're looking to treat, or anything else. And I'm not even just strictly doing, if there are no clinical trials for psychedelics, I'll look at if there are any clinical trials for anything else. 'Cause I'm try whatever it is. If it gets you better, it gets you better. It saves a life. I'm not, preaching this is what worked for me, and it could work for a lot more people.
What other kinds of things are in clinical trials a lot now?
So it's a lot of it's like drug discovery too. So, right. It's like pharmaceuticals patenting or they're creating a new drug that they could patent their IP. That's where the real money is. And that's the interesting thing. Isn't
that more dangerous though too, usually?
A natural compound. It could, it depends what team, like who's behind it, right? Like there are synthetic things that are safer than natural compound. That's why a lot of people are with the whole, I like it because it's natural. I'm like, I get that, but so are a lot of, lethal substances.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, like if you really think about it.
Yeah. Like they're poisonous mushrooms. Like, if someone picks a wrong mushroom thinking they could go out and pick some, and but yeah, the clinical trials part, and then we launched it right after that 60 Minutes thing. Another study participant and I got linked up from a mutual friend.
And you left your job. You do this full time now.
Oh, this is full time, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was at Johns Hopkins, and this guy is one of the best, government affairs guys out there. It's like watching, like, Michael Jordan playing pickup basketball.
When you say government affairs, like
lobby it. So this guy worked on the Hill worked in the House and the Senate.
He's
for years.
He's one of those.
One of those guys, like real smart guy, like knows everything inside out on that level, and so he's been, along with we launched this with a former member of Congress.
Who's that?
Mimi Walters. So she's out in Laguna Beach, and she's a Republican. So it's great because that's
really,
that's who you really need to. Like
the
the
Democrats
Democrats
get them on board.
Yeah, it's the Republicans you really need to show that this is saving lives, and they've been very receptive.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Well, you know why, and I'm guessing.
Let's hear it.
You correct me if I'm wrong here. You're the pro, but and this is something we've started to talk about that I do want to talk about today. Like, there has apparently been a lot of success, like a fuck ton of success, with veterans who are using psychedelics to treat usually PTSD. And let's call it what it is. The more veterans than not also happen to be conservatives. So Republicans, they're hearing about this from their literal constituents who voted for him. Like, hey, I fought for your ass overseas there, and this shit's helping me. And now they have to be like, huh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, once you see, you know, it's crazy to think that someone who's served our country and we've put them in these awful situations that have ruined many lives, ruined their right, and then we just expect them to come home and drop everything, and you know, go back to normal somehow. I mean, and we can't even treat them here. They're going to Mexico. They're going to Costa Rica, right?
And why do they have to do that? Why aren't they getting? Why don't they get access to these trials?
Well, some of them do,
okay.
But that's the thing. There's very little government funding for these trials.
Oh,
so that's what we're advocating for too. So once there's more government funding and more clinical trials, then more people can get into them, and I mean it's a win-win.
You know what's crazy too? I'm actually surprised that when this was first being talked about for you, like 2013, 2014, just thinking about my own personal history map here of like where we were in society, I'm almost surprised it had any funding back then, like at all.
It's crazy.
I'm glad it did. I'm just like, our society seems like finally now some people are warming up to this, but like back then, I don't think like that was what us kids did, rolling Molly at concerts. You know, that was psychedelics. It wasn't medical.
Yeah.
You know, like in society at all. Not that it is now, but at least there are people listening today who are very aware of the topic you're bringing up. You know, 10 years ago, I'm not so sure about that.
No. And even like I talked to a guy yesterday, I think still most medical professionals don't know about this. So, and that's also what we're doing is with the education part. So we're educating members of Congress, senators, right, all the policy and decision makers at the federal level to tell them about this, that this is going to save a lot of lives, and it's going to save a lot of wasted tax dollars.
Are you going down to D.C. to like teach classes?
No, we go to D.C. and talk to members of Congress, talk to their staff, talk to...
Got it.
So that's who we're educating, because if your average doctor doesn't know about this, what do you think an average, politician knows? So, and that's, and then now, I mean, it's just a lot of different moving parts too. And I'm just afraid that someone's gonna have like fentanyl laced with mushrooms or something.
Oh, God,
and then the headline is, right, kid overdoses on magic mushrooms or something, or gets behind a car and kill. And that, I mean, that's a real risk, because in the 1950s and 60s, this research was really good. And then it got politicized.
Because of the hippie movement.
And, right, the counterculture movement, the Vietnam War, a lot of people didn't want to go over there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bipartisan effort. I'm pretty sure, because, right, Nixon as a Republican, but I think there was a Democratic House and Senate. So it was, it was a bipartisan effort to shut it down. And I was talking to the doctors, a few doctors, a month ago, and they said that's a real risk. And that's why what we're advocating for, we're study participants who've done this legally in clinical settings. So what we've done is all legal, and we credit this with saving our lives. Most of us do. And, right, that's a little different than someone saying, I did magic mushrooms in my basement and I think it worked and it saved my life. And,
yes,
because if you're doing this at a reputable institution with real doctors, it's harder to ignore. that. And also with the veteran stories, I mean, a lot of these guys, like a lot of Navy SEALs too, a lot of special operators. And I was shocked to hear that, because these are like the top of the top, right? All these special operators. I'm like, how do they have PTSD? Like, these guys are like the meanest, baddest like guys out there, like best at their jobs. But, you know, they have it for good reason, because they're doing a lot of, you know, crazy stuff, and it's really intense. And then they come back home, and, you know, how are we going to heal them?
They're also really good. Obviously, I wasn't a Navy SEAL, but from how I hear them describe it, the guys who are in that level of our overseas forces, they are really, really good for the most part at compartmentalizing while they're there.
Yeah.
When it's no longer a job,
Yep.
it's like anyone else. When, like, you see on a way less serious scale, you see professional athletes, they retire, and some of them have a lot of trouble especially first 5 years, because they lose their purpose.
Yeah, right.
Right? I was doing this shit every day, full speed. Now I don't have it.
Uh-huh.
It's the same thing with these guys. And I had Andy Bustamante in here, who was a covert CIA spy, probably still is, but he was undercover in a serious place for a long time. And there's a line he said, I'll probably fuck up the phrasing, but it sticks with me, where he was talking about the things that people see in certain seats based on their job. And he's like, you can't undownload that hard drive. It's there.
Yeah. It's permanently seared in your,
So it doesn't, at first glance, of course, it's surprising to hear, like, oh my God, Navy SEALs are doing this left and right. I thought they're the toughest, right? But then you think about it and you're like, no, they're a human fucking being, and they did the wildest shit. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
No, yeah.
It's crazy, man.
It really is. But it's compelling. So hopefully this federal funding initiative happens, more federal funds go to this, and they figure out what else this can treat. Because why just stop at addiction and depression and all? I mean, that's still plenty of stuff to look at right now that we know of is worth looking at. I mean, a lot of the mental and behavioral health. So it's exciting times.
Now, how does it work, though, with like the actual treatment for the veterans? Because you've talked about yours with alcoholics and I guess like addiction. I don't know if it's the same with people addicted to different things, but is there a similar process, or like what do they do, for example, when these SEALs are going to Mexico and doing trips?
So it's a little different if you're leaving the country and doing it down there. With that, I think they mainly there's psilocybin that they use, and ayahuasca, which is another psychedelic compound. I think it's a root and maybe like a certain leaf that they, boil together, and then it has psychedelic properties. So you drink that and then you hallucinate. So that's one.
And how does it solve PTSD?
So similar, like the stories I've heard are, you address these different issues that are bothering you. So if it's something that happened overseas, when that veteran was deployed, they could look back at it and live through it and, have a different perspective on it. Like, this isn't, this was a bad experience, but it doesn't have to ruin the rest of my life. Or, there's nothing else I could have really done differently. And you come to that conclusion, or, things like that. So it is kind of similar in that respect, where you have these different perspectives and different ways of looking at what's bothering you. And it's extremely difficult. And then once you get through that, it's, you made a lot of progress. In the clinical trials, what we're sending folks to, it's usually MDMA, which is ecstasy, right? Yeah. So that's on, I think that's on phase 3. They're thinking that's going to get FDA approved by the end of next year.
Now, so for everyone who's been educated by a wrong system as far as how we create these things, there's people out there hearing this going, they're giving them fucking MDMA out there, who are thinking to themselves certain things that probably aren't true. But it is like, this is what we talk about when we say we're rolling or we're on Molly, stuff like that. So like,
yeah,
to those people, why are they choosing to use that? And what is that from, as opposed to like psilocybin, which we obviously understand is a mushroom?
Yeah. So it's different, right? This is MDMA. It's a different drug, and the protocol is similar, where you have 2 therapists looking at you, right? They're supervising you, they're talking to you. But during the psychedelic session itself, so they do the preparation before, they do the integration after, but during the psychedelic session itself, instead of listening to music like the psilocybin clinical trials, they have an active psychotherapy session when you're under the influence of the MDMA. So once that kicks in...
What do you mean, like...
So the study participant takes the MDMA. After it kicks in, they have an actual psychotherapy session. So, you walk through the trauma, you walk through all of these experiences that are really tough. But you can talk about it, like after the drugs kick in and you're feeling good and you're not really afraid of much, right? And because that's what it does, that's how it acts in your brain. And I'm not really doing it justice by, describing it this eloquently. But it basically, the fear part in your brain and anxiety, that's calmed down. So you could talk about these scary experiences that have traumatized you and are affecting your life negatively, and you could talk about them not feeling that scared anymore.
You can be present without the pain.
Present, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you bring that with you, even after the MDMA wears off, you realize, hey, I kind of, that wasn't that difficult going through this, or it didn't really paralyze me. So it's really interesting, and that's had really promising. I think around 2/3 or 70% of the folks living with PTSD are no longer qualified as having PTSD, which is
wow,
crazy. Because there isn't anything out there right now that's like above 50%. It's not. I don't even think there's anything above like 25%.
Yeah, that sounds 50 sounds ridiculous.
Like 50 that's a great number. If you're saving half these people, that's you basically,
It's wild that the kind of drug that's taken when you go into Marquee for a good night at the club is the same thing they're giving people who did crazy shit, and it's working.
Isn't that nuts?
Wow.
It's like that's why this is all. That's also what piqued my interest about this too. I was just like, this is just such a cool story, and it almost sounds made up that right, this research was happening, it looked really good, the government shut it down, and now it's resurfacing, but a lot of people still think there are no medical benefits, or this is, there are extreme risks to it.
It's all in the hierarchy of how we frame it, though. in society, which we've talked about today a bit, but like bringing it back around towards where we're going here, like we live in a world where doctors will give out SSRIs like they're going out of fucking business, and it's no problem. You know, Prozac, all that stuff. As if like, oh no, it's perfectly fine, right? It's an accepted thing.
Yeah.
Even like lithium, which is a stronger one, but like they'll do this. And then the same world's like, oh no, you can't do MDMA. And again, it's not like you should be doing this recreationally. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
but
yeah.
it's like we live in that, oh, that's what rebels do when they're partying and they have a bad trip and they die, right?
Yeah.
But that's not, we have demonized, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying SSRIs can't help people. They do. They're given out far too much, far too easily, but they absolutely can help.
Yeah.
But we've fully accepted that no matter who gets it. And yet we've demonized as a society attitudes towards these other things. It's not a hell of a lot different than when you talk to like a fossil about weed. You know, if they're like 80 years old and you talk to them about weed, they think it's like the devil's elixir. And I'm like, okay, well, that's just the world they grew up in.
Yeah.
But that's not reality. So the point is like deprogramming this in society.
Yeah.
And which is what you're working on. That is a really difficult battle because you can show people all these successes, but like you were saying maybe 20 minutes ago, it's like, you know, the first kid that does something stupid and gets behind a wheel and kills somebody, you have to fight back against that now, even though it has nothing to do with what you're advocating for.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are real risks on all of this. And about the misinformation part, it's writing back to your point of the prescription drugs and I think that's also, that really helped fuel the opioid epidemic too, with the prescriptions, thinking, you know, there was a fallacy that these aren't that harmful if a doctor is prescribing them, right? So it's a wacky world we're living in, with, you know, some of these drugs that are legal and prescribable. I mean, alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen.
In English, can you explain that to people?
Along with, I think it's the American Cancer Association or something. It's all the known things that can give you cancer, and asbestos is on that list. And so just alcohol, you know, alcohol itself, any alcoholic beverage, could give you a ton of different cancers, not just liver cancer, or right. And it could attack your whole body, knowingly giving people cancer. But you know, look at that industry, and it kills. I think it kills 100+ people a year, 100-something thousand people a year. Opiates are coming up on that if they haven't already surpassed that. And I think cigarettes I think that's 500,000 Americans a year.
You see what you did there, though?
What's that?
Industry.
Oh, yeah.
That's the key problem. Who's spending money on all the lobbyists in D.C.? All these huge alcohol conglomerates, because that's what makes their world go round. And so they buy politicians, and that's why it took so long for weed to get there. Weed started getting there when the alcohol companies started buying into dispensaries, and now they can actually profit off of it. Oh, now suddenly legislation's happening a little bit. You know, it's still not off Schedule 1. There's still a lot of fucked up shit, but like, oh, now, if I'm remembering some correctly, I think maybe Molson, Coors, Constellation brands, like, you know, now suddenly they own these.
They're getting into the game.
Yeah, suddenly, you know, they're buying real estate in Canada to do this, and now it's changing. So, like, cynically in me, I'm going, this will start to change when these companies figure out how they can profit off people recovering with psilocybin or shit like that.
Well, that's also the thing, right? There's no IP in the natural compounds of this, even if it's synthetic. So there are some companies out there trying to tweak the compounds just enough where they can get IP around it. And, you know, it's a great treatment and a terrible business model, unlike rehab, right? I did this, you know, I stopped drinking after the first time. I did this 3 times. 7 years ago, and I'm done. I don't have to go to any therapy. I just go to do an annual checkup with my physician every year. That's it. I don't do anything else. No pills, no drugs that I've, substituted with this. So, right, that's
not good money in it.
Not good money for, compared to something like a rehab where it takes, I think it's 7 or 8 times on average before it works, right? And the guy saying 3% success rate.
Don't get it up to 5.
It's great. Yeah,
it costs us money.
Right? Don't get cute now. Right? So,
yikes,
yeah, it's
man.
all, but as a society too, everyone's addicted by some sort of mental health disorder. And even if you don't know someone personally, your tax dollars are affected by it with all these, wasted treatments and lost economic productivity. So everyone is affected by all of this. So I think, optimistically, I think we'll have this in the next couple of years. The FDA approval, and folks can do this in a clinical setting.
Yeah, there's a good question. Like, what do we need to get there? Like, you talk about funding and the limited funding that's gone into this, which is why, for example, and this is a while ago now, but like the study you did could only have a few people or several people, whatever it was, do it. It couldn't have thousands of people doing it because they didn't have the money to be able to support it. Like, what are the hurdles that we need to get over? And like, are you asking for any specific bills to be passed right now that would allocate a certain amount of federal or state funding in certain places to this type of thing? Like, what's the cadence here?
Yeah, so Ollie has proposed
That's your partner.
Yeah. He's proposed a center of excellence. So he's the government affairs guy, and he did this before, or a few times, I think, but he proposed a center of excellence, NIH, National Institutes of Health, center of excellence to fund this research.
What's a center of excellence?
So basically, have federal funding allocated for universities and to study, it's multidisciplinary studies of this. So clinical trials, do the phase 2s and the phase 3s for alcohol and depression, do some phase 1s if there aren't any on, autism or something else that no one's heard of. So just a range of different studies. And also, unfortunately, but that's the reality of this, this is really only on the coasts, right? You hear about the coastal elites. This is New York, California. You got Hopkins doing this in Yale, but
towards the coast,
right?
Yeah.
The rest of the states in the middle of the country, which is hurting pretty bad and could use clinical trials too, doesn't have much. There's Ohio State is doing some research. They're starting up, and I think Wisconsin, Madison is doing some. But we just need different locations too. We need it broadened out throughout the whole country, because I get a lot of calls in the middle of the country, and I'm like, there just aren't any near you right now. So
I'm kind of wondering in my head, without any scientific facts on this, because God knows I'm not a doctor nor an expert on any of this stuff, but cynically in me, I'm wondering if someone will fuck with that compound and find a way, just like technology, to make it fade off. Meaning, like, whatever you took, and I don't even know if this is possible, I'm talking out of my ass right now, but whatever you took in 2014,
okay,
that won't be what's available in 2035. They'll have that thing, but it will wane. So people need to come and get the treatment again a year later or something like that.
Okay.
This is, again, without any scientific fact. I don't even know if that's possible, but shit, they've done some crazy shit before. Like, my head goes to Molson Coors will figure that out, right? Like, and that would suck, because sometimes I feel like in society we legitimately can't have nice things because we find something, But, and this is a downside of capitalism, and I am a capitalism supporter through and through. I always gotta say that. But like, you know, people, they'll find a way to make the business out of it and bastardize it.
So, you know, for the alcohol industry, I think this might help them too, because think about it. If you could get people that, you know, before this treatment comes out, it's either you give it up completely or you die. Right? But if I could give you this treatment that could help you control your drinking and you don't have to give it up, I think a lot more people would be interested in doing that than playing the zero-sum game where it's all or nothing.
I can see the advertising campaign already.
Right? I mean,
why have 10 when you can have 2? Psilocybin by Mostly Course.
Yeah. Like every night of the week.
Oh, man.
So it's the Wild West right now, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, if anyone could predict this, they're psychic, but who knows how this is going to turn out. I mean, there are a lot of different ways it could go.
Well, you're one of the guys steering the ship, and I mean that in a good way. You know, you're trying. You're
Thank
trying
you.
to move the word around, and I love that this is now the thing you've gone to, because, like, as you said, your background was journalism and dealing like in financial markets in your case specifically, and like this is a totally different thing that you're passionate about, and now you've put all your energy behind doing it full time, and like I got to think from the outside, it's an extremely fulfilling thing because it is your lived experience, and now you get to help other people either navigate how to go about doing that or get more access to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I also I'll add this to it, that like you're open-minded to looking into all avenues as well. You're not just like, this is the only way.
No, not
if
at
something makes sense, you're like, well, how can we help there? It's
exactly.
really cool.
Yeah, no, because I didn't look at this clinical trial going in thinking this is psychedelics, I got to do it. It was, this might be able to help me, let me try it. And I'm with that. If another clinical trial comes up that's doing something else and looks promising, go for it. I mean, if that could help save your life and you're looking for help, do it. Absolutely.
And who else? You mentioned, what was the congresswoman's name? Former congresswoman?
Mimi Walters.
Mimi Walters. So what other types of prominent people or organizations do you have either behind you, or do you have like a board of directors?
Yeah, we got a great board.
Oh, wow. So like who's on that?
We got a great advisory board too. We got really impressive people. I mean, I am extremely lucky to have a lot of these aren't your stereotypical psychedelic advocates.
Right.
So we got Mimi Walters, Susan Dunn, who's just a phenomenal advocate.
Who's she?
So she's actually a friend of my buddy's, and she's just done a lot of work for veterans and mental health care. Okay. And so she sees the potential. She saw this firsthand in me, and then read up on the research with the veterans and got really excited about that as well.
What's her official profession? Is she a psychiatrist or? Oh,
no. She's just, someone interested in this with a great platform and
got it.
Helping us out. And we got Kara Zimmerman, who's a great doctor. She's addiction specialist too, mental and behavioral health. So MD.
Where's she out of?
She is at Brown. So she's, really smart. She's awesome. And she's leading the trial participants coming back to us for the group integration. She's leading that. And she's been great. And then Ollie's on the board as well, Amir Hushman. And then the advisory board, we got very lucky. Got this Navy captain, Chuck Connor. He was the former president of he was up there in the Red Cross, and then he was the president and CEO of the American Lung Association.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he was high up there in the Navy and then had a great professional career in the private sector as well.
So that's both military and also having the aspect of like a traditional form of medicine background.
Yeah.
I don't like the word traditional there, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like something totally different.
Yeah, he's great. And then who else? Holly Anderson, she's really impressive. She's also on the board of the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
Oh, wow.
She's really sharp. She's, one of the top cardiologists in the country, in the world.
Yeah, that's another total other side of medicine.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, I mean, we got very lucky. This guy, Lenny Barshak, he, great tech entrepreneur and created and sold, I think, 3 or 4 companies.
How'd you get these people? It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, friends of friends. But they're like, you got to talk to this person, or this person would be interested in this, or and so just got very lucky because it is pretty niche, right? And not too many people are talking about it yet, or at least back then, more so now. So it has piqued a lot of interest in places where you might not think, like a lot of these, really successful folks in their professional lives that, arguably have a lot to risk, right? Being associated with, but I think it also helps that we partnered with the Hefter Research Institution, which these guys were behind my clinical trial. So it's pretty cool that we're working with the guys that saved my life.
What was that called? The
Hefter Research Institute.
Is that like out of NYU?
No, so they used NYU as a site. So this was their, they were behind this research. They funded this, and NYU teamed up with them. So, I mean, a lot of credit all around for doing this clinical trial. Right, and the reason they partnered with us on a lot of this is they saw that we're not getting involved in these political movements, and we're solely based on the research and promoting and advocating on that.
What do you mean political movements?
Like the decriminalization or legalization movements, ballot initiatives. So we're not going, although we have testified on some state research bills where they want to, do this research for veterans with PTSD or mental health care. We'll testify for that, but we're focused on the federal, because like we mentioned earlier with pot, right? Cannabis is what, I think 39 states it's legal in, something high 30s.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's still federally illegal. And it's
Hilarious.
still Schedule 1, and right? And this is a slightly different road than that. There hasn't been, I don't think, many clinical trials going past phase 1 for marijuana, and with psilocybin and MDMA, it already surpassed that. They're already on phase 3 or approaching phase 3.
For these same things? Or totally different things?
So for MDMA, what they're looking at is PTSD. Right. That's what's on phase 3. For psilocybin, what's farthest along in the phases, it's major depressive disorder, so depression. So my trial was a phase 2, and they're hopefully doing a phase 3 in the coming months, or starting to enroll for that.
But your trial was also like 7 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, they take a while.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
God damn.
I mean, think about that, right? And that's why, we're really focused on the federal funding part of it.
Obama was in office when you did this.
To make, 2014, 2015. Yeah.
That's crazy. We
Right?
don't think you think of this world because you're in it. You understand what it is, but like the average schmo like me, we hear phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's just words on a page. We don't
Yeah.
realize how long. I mean, shit. By the time they get from one phase to the other, they've come up with something different.
It's right.
For some things, obviously.
No,
Yeah.
it could be. But yeah, so and think about how many people are dying
Yeah,
that could be saved.
that's
because
the saddest part.
Yeah. So, but I think we're heading in the right direction, and at least I'd hope so.
Yeah, man, dude, I'm really blown away by it, and like I was telling you off camera, like I'm really going to be going down the rabbit hole in this now, especially after this conversation, because there's so much in there. But one thing I did forget earlier when you were going through your experience to build upon was the music thing. So I
Yeah.
wanted to come back to that
Oh,
real
sure.
quick. So you had said, you did explain it was predetermined music that they chose. They put classical music in your earphones,
Yeah.
right? But you were talking with them while this stuff was going on. So like, would you take your earphones off to say something or?
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay.
Like I would lift one of them up because they were headphones
was like
this.
this?
Yeah.
Oh shit!
So I would, like,
You're like in
lift
a
one
rave,
up
like
and
in
I'm
one of
like-
those rave things, like
Yeah, it
those
was-
silent
and-
raves.
Yeah, and but the IMAS too is something that you'd get on a flight, like an overnight flight to sleep. So it was, and that's when they were like, yeah, why don't you? And for people that are curious, there's I think it's still on there. Johns Hopkins uploaded their playlist on Spotify.
Oh,
Yeah, so if you search like Johns Hopkins psilocybin playlist,
I'm going to do that.
yeah, they'll have that on there.
Do you remember the songs?
I
Like any of
remember.
them?
Yeah, I remember because it's one of my favorites. It's Adagio for strings, and it's like it's really dramatic, but it's also sad, and I just remember that coming on, and I was just like, this is really crazy stuff.
I wonder if we can play that. Like, does anyone own the copyright on Adagio for strings?
I don't know.
I don't know, but just Google it, people. I don't want to take that chance.
It was
It's too much
it was
work.
in that scene in Platoon. I think that scene where no spoiler alerts, but it was that famous helicopter scene when they left one of the people behind.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm trying to think of that tune. I know what scene
Yeah.
you're talking about, though. Wow. So that's like such a nerdy passion of mine with music. I love music and how it makes you feel and like what it does to the system. Like, did you find yourself more in tune with another thing that's hard to describe in words, but with, I'll keep it simple, with like the rhythmic patterns that were happening in conjunction with what you were seeing and feeling? Like, you know how when
like
you're
a screensaver or
Yeah.
something with back to Apple.
yeah,
Like the shapes. You remember the slideshow, not the slideshow, but when you played iTunes or something, and then you could have the graphics and it kind of moved with the music.
yes.
It was similar to that.
So you do, and it's almost like, so maybe the better way to put it would be like the sounds become a visual themselves without you necessarily seeing anything.
Yeah. I mean, it really had an impact on your session. It was very instrumental on it. No pun intended, but it was, really very impactful. And I don't know if it would have been as successful of an experience or impactful without that music. And especially like curated music too. It's not, they tended to stay away from songs with words because they didn't want that to really,
Yeah.
influence the session. So they kept it with like some indigenous music with like windpipes, and that was kind of cool. And then classical, and I heard recently, I think this was from Ollie too, that they do it scientifically in a way where they change the music, or they have like when the psilocybin is peaking and getting at its most powerful point, they change the music to make it very, dramatic, or so to really get that extra mile out of it. So there's definitely, there are companies out there curating music specifically for psychedelic sessions. So it's a real thing.
I will maintain this till the day I die. Music is a drug. It's a beautiful drug, but it has elements of a drug. And I think that what you're saying right there is a great piece of evidence in the confirmation direction for it.
I think it's a great combo, yeah. And I want people, have they done brain scans after listening to, some people's favorite music after they listen to, that would be an interesting, right?
Totally, man. And it's interesting that they use songs without words. I wonder if they would be open to working with newer songs that are mainstream songs and using the instrumentals, because
that's interesting.
In what I do, when I make my shorts, I use great songs. I use songs from all different eras. I use new songs, I use old songs, but I use all kinds of pop culture songs. So I may use the instrumental of Sunshine of Your Love by Cream, or I may use Mask Off by Future. I'll go all over. I've used artists that some people would be like, wow, you used that one? Just because it has nothing to do with what it is. As long as it's something that could be culturally relevant and the sound works, I use it. So I have that type of audio-visual mind. That is how I'm wired, and I don't know how other people think about this, people who don't have that, or maybe aren't, or less of a creative person. But I am so in tune with where songs are really, not to take away from the artist, but really made by the instrumental versus, holy shit, the artist made the song, because the instrumental has nothing to it.
Yeah.
You ever hear the song I Feel It Coming by The Weeknd? I feel it coming.
I think so, yeah.
I feel it coming.
Good instrumental on that, or no?
No. The respect I had for and I've been a day one. I was a fan of The Weeknd when no one knew who he was. But the respect I had for him after first hearing that instrumental, I'm like, it's not that it's bad. It's just there's nothing here. He brought his voice.
He's doing all the work.
Brought this to life.
Wow.
And then other songs Even Till I Collapse by Eminem.
Okay.
I don't want to take a damn thing away from Eminem, because he's incredible on that song. But you listen to that fucking thing without him on it, you're like, whoa.
Wow.
So I feel this, and I'll sit in here. You can picture me. I do it right here with the speakers on 60 or 70, and I'm bumping it because I want to feel it on every single beat. And that becomes, sometimes I'll be like, I need to go work out now. You know what I mean? So I'm curious to know if they would work in existing songs without those words and see if people even responded to it more, because it may be things that they recognize or know in passing.
That would be interesting to look at.
Write that one down.
I will. I'll bring it up to the doctors. That would be interesting to look at.
That's a different world, man. I'm telling you, it changes how you look at the music for sure.
There's a classical orchestra out there that plays, and they're famous too. I'm blanking on the name, but they play pop music, Beatles, to anywhere to. I don't know. I stopped listening to music after it's 1970. So it's maybe old 80s too, but
I know who
I'm
you're
really
talking
bad
about.
with the right. And they these pop music, these pop songs, but it's all orchestra.
Yeah, I can't think of the name,
really
but I know
good,
who you're talking about. Yeah, sometimes I'll use like with the Lose Yourself with Raj. We used Lose Yourself.
Oh, did you?
But I used a what the hell is his name? I think it's Ludovico. The
ukulele. What is it?
It's a guitar rendition where he's also using his hands and doing dun dun psh, and hitting it.
Oh, that,
and I was like, oh, this is flames, and we put it back there. It changed what it was, but people still know right away. They know the Lose Yourself sound.
Oh,
right there.
wow.
Dun, 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 you know.
I'll listen to that one with Mark on the way back.
Shit's wild, man. But listen, I would have you here all night if we kept going. At some point, like, I'm going to want to bring you back to talk about
you let me know.
Stuff. But this was great, man. And your journey is, it's awesome to hear that something like, it almost sounds like a magic pill, like in a way, but
it kind of was for me, which is,
it's crazy that it has
a lot of
practiced
people
that
don't
way.
like that. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, this is going to save millions of lives. The first year it'll be approved. I mean, this is going to save a lot of lives.
Well, thank you for sharing it and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks
man.
for right back at you.
Of course, I'm happy to
Thank
give
you.
shit like this a platform and learn some more. You know, I'm so uneducated on this, so this was very enlightening for me. But I want to know what you're doing, and let's keep the people updated over the years
got
here
it.
and keep it rolling.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, John.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, bro. Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me.